Hey guys, tonight we're time travelling again, but not to knights and castles. No, we're going somewhere older, stranger, warmer, much, much warmer. We're going to ancient Egypt. But this isn't some sunlit river cruise past pyramids and papyrus. You're not a pharaoh, you're not a priest, you're not even a humble scribe. You're a concubine. Before we slip behind the curtains of the palace harem, take a second to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy these sleepy nightmares disguised as history lessons. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it? Midnight in Minnesota? 3 AM in Qatar? I always love knowing who's out there not sleeping with me. Now dim the lights, maybe light a candle, or just imagine one flickering somewhere near a sandstone wall. Let the hum of the fan be your Nile breeze, and let's begin. Congratulations, you exist, and unfortunately you exist in ancient Egypt, not as a priestess, not as a noble woman sipping date wine in a breezy courtyard, but as a teenage girl now officially owned by the royal institution. You're not a queen. You're not even a servant. You're something more specific, something delicate and disposable. You're a concubine. Your story does not begin with destiny. It begins with a transaction. You may have come from a farming village upriver, where the days were slow and the Nile was the only thing that moved with purpose. Or maybe your father owed a tax he couldn't pay, and the collector suggested an alternate form of currency, you. Or perhaps you were part of a diplomatic gift, a bundle of silks, spices and girls, sent from one kingdom to another as a token of goodwill and veiled submission. However it happened, however they dressed it up, your future was sealed the moment someone with power looked at you and said, "She'll do." You're between the ages of 12 and 16, maybe younger. Time is fuzzy. No one bothers with birthdays here, unless you're royalty, and you're not. You've been stripped of your old clothes, your name, and your family. Everything that made you you, gone. From now on, you're not a daughter, a sister, or a person. You're property. A flower placed carefully in the pharaoh's private garden, meant to bloom silently and die quietly. They don't call it slavery, of course. Not in the palace. There are euphemisms. Honour, duty, selection. You were chosen to serve. Isn't that flattering? They say it like a compliment, like winning a prize. But it's the kind of prize that only feels valuable to the one doing the taking. For you, it's a sentence, gilded, perfumed, and absolute. The palace is enormous, too large to understand all at once. It doesn't welcome you. It swallows you. Wide stone corridors, endless courtyards, ceilings that vanish into shadow. You're escorted, no, paraded, through gates carved with stories of gods and kings. You don't belong here, but that doesn't matter. You're here now. They call the harem Per Kenneret, which loosely translates to the House of the Beauties. That sounds nice until you realise the name is doing a lot of heavy lifting. It's not a house, it's a compound, a complex. A beautiful cage with scented corners and golden edges. You share it with dozens, sometimes hundreds, of other women. Some born here, some captured, some gifted like you, some hopeful, some bitter, all silent. There's no formal orientation, no welcome basket, no smiling matron to gently explain your new life. Instead you're bathed, scrubbed, examined. Your hair is shaved or styled depending on palace fashion. Oils are applied to your skin, thick, sticky, fragrant. You're measured like cloth, weighed like produce, and when they're done with you, You are declared ready. Ready for what? No one says. You are taken to your room, if you can call it that. It's not yours. It never will be. It's a sleeping mat in a shared chamber, a space carved out of silence and eyes that never stop watching. There's no door, only a curtain, and behind it, the sound of muffled weeping and forced laughter. You're told to rest. You don't. Leap is difficult when you don't know what tomorrow is. You start to learn the rules, not because they're taught, but because you break them. Eye contact is a risk. Smiling too much is suspicious. Speaking out of turn is dangerous. Asking questions is almost always the wrong move. You learn fast or you disappear, not dramatically, not violently. You just get reassigned, moved, forgotten. Girls vanish from beds and no one asks why. You get used to holes in the group. There's a hierarchy, even here, especially here. Senior concubines, women who've been here long enough to become experts in survival, look at you with a mix of pity and annoyance. They've seen hundreds like you, fresh, terrified, naive. You won't be special to them until the pharaoh says your name. And he won't. Because that's the other thing. Most concubines never even meet him. Yes, you live in his palace. You exist within his orbit. But proximity is not the same as intimacy. You're a numbered face in a crowded hallway. A decorative possibility lined up on ceremonial days. Groomed for a gaze that might never arrive. Some girls get chosen. Many do not. You learn not to hope. Hope is not encouraged here. You're given a new name. Not legally. Legally, you don't matter. But socially. A softer name. A name that rolls off the tongue when whispered behind linen curtains. It might mean delight, or fragrance, or obedience. You answer to it because not answering is worse. Every name here is a mask. Yours now too. And so begins your new identity. Carefully crafted, surgically stripped of history, polished for presentation. You are not you. You are the pharaohs, maybe. There are whispers. Always whispers. The walls have ears, or maybe it's just the other girls. Everyone's listening. No one speaks too loudly, because volume implies confidence, and confidence implies ignorance. And ignorance here is punished. Not always with lashes, sometimes with a look, or worse, a reassignment. You'll learn that punishment in the harem often comes dressed as opportunity. They begin to teach you how to move, not just how to walk. That would be too simple. You learn how to glide, how to carry yourself as if your bones are carved from incense smoke and your feet don't acknowledge gravity. Every step is a performance. Every bow of your head, every tilt of your wrist, every blink is part of a larger choreography you are never allowed to rehearse. You learn to look demure, but not too demure. Mysterious but not suspicious. Inviting but not eager. You must always seem like someone worth choosing, but never someone asking to be. It's a tightrope made of papyrus, balanced over a pit of discarded girls, and you are always being watched by older concubines who envy your youth, by attendants who resent your place, by eunuchs who see everything but say nothing, and by priests who pass through, pretending not to notice the harem, even as they judge each heartbeat like it's a sin waiting to be confessed. You're reminded that your body isn't yours, but your appearance is your responsibility. There is no comfort here, only maintenance. Your skin is oiled daily until it shines like a sunlit tomb wall. Your eyebrows are plucked into delicate curves. You are instructed on the ancient art of kohl eyeliner, which is beautiful, yes, but also stings like the gods are judging you for your tear ducts. You're told what to eat, not much, A little fruit, a little honeyed bread, nothing too pungent. Garlic is forbidden. Not because of superstition, but because bad breath is considered a moral failure. You must always be pleasant. Even if you are starving, terrified and menstruating in a room where that word is never spoken, you're expected to be docile, but also prepared. Like a museum exhibit, still but alert. You learn to sleep light, in case someone comes in the night to move you, or wake you, or select you. No one tells you what selection entails. You're just told to be ready for it. Some girls pray, others pretend. A few laugh, not the real laugh of joy, but the brittle, echoing laugh of someone who's realised that hope is a luxury item not included with your news station. Once, you see a girl cry in the courtyard, silently, her face perfectly composed, while tears drip down like condensation from a broken urn. No one comforts her. No one even reacts. Because everyone knows that sooner or later, it will be your turn to cry like that. And when it is, the silence will feel like kindness. Time stretches in strange directions here. Days blur. There are no seasons in this part of the palace, only the cycle of being dressed and undressed, groomed and inspected, praised and ignored. You could be here for days, months, years. You will never know which. The sun rises, the sun sets, and you remain. At night you dream, or at least you try to. But even your dreams are colonised. You dream of the river, of open air, of your mother's arms. But it always ends the same way. You are called. Not by name, but by number. By function. You're summoned into brightness that blinds. And you wake up before anything else happens. Sometimes you wonder if this is what the afterlife is. Not paradise, not punishment, just stillness. Gilded captivity. Eternal waiting dressed in gold leaf and ceremonial perfume. And then, one day there's a visitor. You don't know his name, only his sandals. He enters the chamber with the confidence of a man who owns the floor. The other girls straighten. You do too. Not because you were told, but because your body knows better now. He walks through the line like he's choosing fruit at market. No words, just glances, just math, weighing beauty, posture, pliability. His eyes flicker past you. Don't stop. Keep moving. You hold your breath anyway. Then he leaves, just like that. Nothing happens. No one was chosen, that day at least. But you realise something. That was a royal steward. One of Pharaoh's intermediaries, a whisperer of women, and you were almost looked at. Almost. And somehow, almost is worse. You learn to live in a state of permanent rehearsal. Every moment is a quiet audition. You're always practicing for a scene that may never come. The moment when someone powerful might finally choose to notice you, or speak to you, or require something from you. And what will you do then? Smile, bow, obey? That's the entire script. There are no lines for dissent. Occasionally a new girl arrives. She's always wide-eyed, always asking questions. What are we waiting for? She'll ask. And someone, maybe you, will gently pull her aside and whisper, "We're waiting to be nothing." You won't mean it cruelly, you'll mean it as mercy, because it's better to expect nothing than to be gutted by the weight of expectation. And then, just as often, a girl will vanish. No fanfare, no explanation. Her sleeping mat is rolled up. Her sandals are gone. Her scent fades slowly from the air, and the space she occupied fills up with silence. Sometimes she was chosen. Sometimes she was reassigned. Sometimes it's better not to ask. There are rumours, of course. There are always rumours. That some were sent to distant villas. That others were discarded quietly. that one girl tried to run and was caught before she reached the outer gate. Her punishment? Unknown, but the eunuchs whispered about it for days. Then they stopped. Then no one mentioned her again. The message is always the same. Don't be too curious. Curiosity implies desire. Desire implies agency. And agency is dangerous. You come to understand that power in the harem doesn't belong to the concubines. It belongs to the ones who are never seen. The matrons who enforce silence. The scribes who tally beauty like it's livestock inventory. The eunuchs who report everything. And the pharaoh, distant, divine, and functionally mythical. He might as well be a god. In fact, he is one, technically. They call him NTR NFR, the good god. He has a temple, a priesthood, a cult. You, meanwhile, have a comb, a jar of perfume, and the persistent ache of being ornamental in a room full of ornaments. Sometimes a concubine is summoned. The process is ritualized, cloaked in ceremony. She is bathed, perfumed, dressed in linen that costs more than a farmer makes in 10 years. She's painted, rubbed with myrrh and resins and prayers. Then she's taken, not cruelly, not violently, just efficiently. She doesn't return the same. She might walk differently, speak less, laugh with a tighter mouth. Sometimes she is rewarded, moved into better quarters, given more privacy, allowed softer fabrics. Sometimes nothing changes at all. The pharaoh saw her, and that was enough. For him, not for her. And occasionally she never returns. You don't ask why. The strange thing is, the longer you stay here, the more the world outside begins to feel like something you imagined. Like a story someone once told you under a tree. Your mother's face becomes fuzzy. Your father's voice fades. The smell of river water, the sound of village chatter, the way the earth cracked under your feet in summer, all of it softens into a blur. You're not even sure if it was real. The harem replaces your past with repetition. The same steps, the same greetings, the same phrases you recite during etiquette drills. You're taught how to greet a royal consort, how to receive compliments without appearing eager, how to veil your gaze in the presence of higher-ranking women, and how to move without causing offence to someone 3 ranks above you in beauty, but 5 below in favour. The hierarchy is confusing, but it's enforced. Every girl knows who's ahead and who's behind, who used to be favoured, who is rising, who is slipping. It's never spoken, but it's always known. And then there are the inspections. They don't call them that, but that's what they are. Periodically, someone, a physician, a priest, a matron, comes in to ensure the health and sanctity of the chamber. You are examined. Not medically, and not really. They check your skin, your teeth, your posture. They ask if you're still bleeding monthly. They note your shape. They touch your wrist and say nothing, then mark something down on a tablet you're never allowed to see. You try to stay still. You try to seem pleasing. You try not to think about how closely this resembles a cattle market, only more polite and somehow colder. Later, you'll hear one of the senior concubines mutter under her breath, "Still fertile, that's all they care about." She doesn't sound angry, just tired. Tired is the default setting here, but no one sleeps well. Not really. You rest in fragments. You drift. You dream of doors that don't exist, of windows that open to places you've never seen. You wake up and find yourself staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks, wondering how many girls before you have done the same. And then the sun rises. and the day begins again. Exactly the same. Exactly different. Exactly unending. There's a moment, subtle and quiet, when you realise you've started to forget your own voice. Not your ability to speak. You can still form words. You're even trained to sing, softly, sweetly, in harmonies designed to soothe and seduce. But your voice, the one that once laughed out loud, shouted across fields, asked questions no one wanted to answer, that voice is disappearing, fading like a scent in the wind. You begin to speak in measured tones, filtered phrases, careful agreements. You're fluent now in the language of survival. Even your body has become alien. It no longer belongs to you. It is a thing to be displayed, compared, altered. You sit straighter, walk slower, eat less. You learn which curves are praised and which are punished with silence. You learn to anticipate compliments the way a prisoner anticipates sunlight, briefly, cautiously, knowing it will be gone again soon. One day, a girl is chosen to become a secondary wife. It's the closest thing to promotion here. She will have her own room, servants, new clothes, a title. Not quite queen, but not just concubine. The rest of you pretend to be happy for her. You smile, clap politely, maybe offer a flower or a whispered wish for good fortune. But the truth hangs in the air like perfume turned sour. She has escaped. Not the palace, not the pharaoh, but the waiting. And you? You are still here. Some of the girls make up stories to cope. They imagine the pharaoh as kind, generous, even handsome. They create little myths. That he once rescued a concubine from disgrace, or spared a girl's brother after she wept at his feet. These stories pass from mat to mat, whispered late at night when everyone should be asleep. No one believes them. But belief isn't the point. The point is pretending something good might happen. Even if it's a lie dressed in linen. Others take a different path. They numb themselves. You can see it in their eyes. That unfocused glaze of someone who has turned their feelings inward, where no one can reach them. They don't flinch during inspections. They don't startle when the curtains rustle. They've become furniture in their own lives, decorative, still, and hollow. You don't want to end up like that, but you're already starting to. The idea of love, romantic, warm, messy love, has become ridiculous. No one here talks about it, not seriously. Affection is a dangerous fantasy. Desire is for the pharaoh. You don't desire, you wait to be desired. That's the arrangement. If you long for anything outside of that, it's betrayal. Not to him, to yourself. Once you catch sight of a gardener through a half-closed curtain. He's young, strong, hands covered in earth, sweat on his brow. For a moment, you let yourself imagine speaking to him. Just speaking. Asking his name. Maybe telling him yours. Your real one. The one you haven't used since you arrived. But the moment vanishes. You pull the curtain shut. You know better. That kind of thought is how girls end up disappeared. You're reminded of this when you hear, late one evening, the sound of a girl being dragged. Not far. Just past your quarters. No screams. Just muffled resistance, followed by nothing. Her sleeping mat is gone the next morning. So is her name. When someone whispers it later, one of the matrons hisses sharply and says, "She's not to be spoken of." You nod. You all nod. Silence is safety. Memory is danger. Sometimes you wonder what would happen if you simply walked out, through the courtyard, past the guards, into the river. You wouldn't make it, of course, but the idea visits you. Not often. Just enough to remind you that your cage, however soft, is still a cage. And yet, In rare moments, something breaks through. A breeze that carries the scent of fresh papyrus. A bird call from beyond the high walls. The sound of laughter, real laughter, from the kitchens or the servants' quarters. Something that reminds you that the world still exists out there. That not everything has been reduced to eyeliner, incense, and quiet despair. You hold on to these moments like contraband. Small, unspeakable treasures buried deep inside the version of yourself you're not allowed to be anymore. And so you go on. You wake. You stretch. You bathe. You eat. You wait. You smile when told to smile. You freeze when told to be still. You recite poetry you don't believe, and wear jewellery that bruises your collarbones. You're called beautiful, but never valuable. Wanted, but never loved. Present, but never whole. Your identity is no longer a thing you possess. It's a costume, a shell, a reflection in a polished copper mirror, smiling back with eyes that know too much. But you wear it anyway. Because not wearing it would mean cracking. And in this place, broken things are not repaired. They're removed. So you continue. Not because you're strong. Not because you're hopeful. But because stopping isn't allowed. And somewhere in the quiet of your soul, under the perfume, beneath the painted smile, curled in a corner of the girl you used to be, a small flicker remains. Not of rebellion. Not yet. Just memory. And for now, that will have to be enough. Your new world is beautiful. That's the first lie you're taught to believe. The palace, vast, gleaming, divine, sits like a god on the Nile's edge. From a distance, it looks like paradise. Limestone walls glowing gold at sunrise, date palms swaying in carefully planted rows, fountains that catch the light just so. Inside, it's cool, ornate, smooth, silent, and yet somehow it never feels safe. Your room is small, not in size, but in feeling. It holds your sleeping mat, a small chest for linens, a copper mirror so polished you can see what's left of your old self in it. It's shared, of course. Privacy is not something you get anymore, not even bodily. You are always seen, always assessed, always lit like a statue in a temple, admired but never left alone. The walls are painted, stories of gods and kings, jackals and falcons, divine births and holy wars. You stare at them for hours, wondering if they're watching you back. The gods look angry, the pharaohs look smug. No one looks like they care. There are no windows. That would invite dust, and sound, and thoughts of escape. Instead you live by lamplight. Small clay bowls of oil with flickering wicks that never fully brighten the corners. The shadows are thick here. They cling. They listen. Sometimes you hear whispers that might be real. Other times, it's just the building breathing, sandstone settling like old bones. The air is dry, always. Even when you sweat, and you do, constantly, the moisture disappears before it can comfort you. You lick your lips, they stay cracked. You breathe deeply. It tastes like perfume and dust. You stop noticing the smell of rose oil after a while. Then one day you smell it again, and realise it's not the oil that changed. It's you. Water is brought in by hand. You don't fetch it. That would be unseemly. A servant does. She doesn't speak. She doesn't look at you. She leaves the jug by the door and disappears. The water is always lukewarm, always slightly metallic, but it's clean, at least. Or clean enough that you're still alive. Outside, the world continues. You hear it. The chants from the temple, the distant bleating of goats, the shuffle of sandals on stone as soldiers pass. But it never reaches you. You're not part of it anymore. You live in a bubble of gold and linen, and it's getting harder to remember the feeling of bare earth beneath your feet. The floors here are smooth, polished stone, cool in the morning, hot by midday, silent always. Your feet ache from it. There are no rugs, that's for royalty. You get thin mats. Sometimes you fold one into quarters to create the illusion of softness. It doesn't help. Eventually your bones adjust or give up. It's hard to tell the difference. Your bed, and we're using the word generously, is a woven mat of reeds. Thick enough to avoid the worst of the floor's chill, thin enough to remind you that comfort is for someone else. There's a sheet sometimes, if linen is available, if it's not being used by someone more important, if it hasn't been taken for washing, which happens once a season maybe. You don't complain. You just lie down and pretend you're tired enough to ignore the way the fibres bite into your skin. The ceiling is high. That's supposed to impress you. And it does, for a while. Until you realise it just makes you feel smaller. Like you've been swallowed by the building. Like you're a thought echoing in a skull that no longer wants you there. And then there's the heat. The palace is designed to keep cool, that's the theory. And yes, it's better than being outside under the full sun. But better doesn't mean good. The stone holds warmth. It radiates it back at you like an angry god. You sweat through your linen, and when you finally sit still long enough for the dampness to evaporate, it leaves behind a salty crust that itches. You're told not to scratch. Scratching is undignified. If your skin flakes, you're given oil. If it breaks, you're punished for damaging palace property, because that's what your body is now. Property. You develop ways to cope. Standing near a curtain when the wind shifts. Splashing water on your feet. Curling up under the storage shelf where the shade is thicker. You learn to exist within discomfort. You learn to pretend it's fine. And the moment you start believing it is, that's when they say you're adapting. The halls are long and quiet. The silence isn't peaceful. It's stifling. You walk in it like you're underwater. Every sound you make, footstep, breath, rustle of linen, feels like a violation. You whisper even when no one's around. And then sometimes you hear music. Faint. Faint as memory. Harps, flutes, the low beat of a drum. It comes from the entertainment chambers. Or maybe the temple. Or maybe it's just someone trying to remember who they were, humming to themselves as they sweep a floor they'll never own. The sound is soft. Then it's gone. Then you wonder if it was ever there at all. At night, the palace glows faintly. Not from electricity, obviously, but from oil lamps lining the halls. The flames flicker, casting shadows that move when nothing else does. You grow familiar with every crack in the wall, every stain on the stone, every echo of every footstep that isn't yours. Your senses become tuned to absence. You begin to notice things you shouldn't. Who closes their curtain tight? Who eats more slowly? Who flinches when the steward walks by? You don't mention it. You wouldn't. The palace teaches you not to see too much. Observation is a form of rebellion. So instead, you stare at the wall paintings, the ones meant to glorify life and eternity. You trace the figures with your eyes. Osiris, Isis, Ra in his boat, Anubis weighing hearts. And then you reach the part of the mural they never talk about, the row of faceless women, arms raised, hair flowing, all identical. You realise you look just like them now. Identical, interchangeable, decorative. And that's the point. There's a particular sound that never leaves you. Silence wrapped around surveillance. You grow attuned to the near-invisible mechanics of your confinement. A light footfall just beyond the wall, a barely audible breath on the other side of a curtain, the creak of a sandal strap as someone pauses in a hallway they weren't supposed to linger in. These are not accidents. Nothing in the harem happens by accident. Everything here is observed, recorded, and judged. But no one tells you the rules. The floors are clean, immaculate in fact. Not because the girls clean them, that would be a scandal, but because silent workers come at dawn and scrub them with soaked reeds and limestone powder. You're told not to speak to these workers, not to thank them, not to acknowledge that they exist. You're told it would confuse the boundaries of station, as if your station isn't already confusion incarnate. The walls are smooth but not empty. Frescoes climb toward the ceiling, scenes of god-slaying chaos, of pharaohs in ceremonial poses, surrounded by lotus flowers, papyrus stalks, bulls, falcons, crocodiles. You study these scenes daily, not because they comfort you, but because they're the only art you're allowed to see. There are no books here, no scrolls, no letters, nothing written except what's painted, and none of it meant for you. One image in particular repeats across the harem. Pharaoh standing tall, arms outstretched, with women kneeling around him. Hands raised in praise, heads bowed in reverence. All identical, all faceless. The more you stare at it, the more it stares back. And the furniture, what little of it exists, is more symbolic than practical. Benches too narrow to sit on comfortably. Pillows that hold the scent of too many bodies. Low tables arranged for display, not use. If something is beautiful, it's usually uncomfortable. If something is soft, it's probably not for you. Every item you touch feels like it's borrowed. Every surface warns you not to get attached. Then there's the garden. Yes, there's a garden. Of course there is. This is Egypt, the land of carefully engineered paradise. Behind the outer chamber is a private courtyard designed for rest and inspiration. It features a rectangular pool lined with lotus blossoms and occasionally lilies. It's surrounded by palm trees, sweetgrass, and well-trimmed hedges. The water glistens. The breeze stirs the scent of blue water lilies, sacred, serene. And yet, standing beside it, you feel nothing, because the garden is not for you. It is for the idea of you, for decoration, for display, for the rare day when a guest of rank might pass through and glimpse the loveliness of the women at rest. You are part of the landscape here, like the lilies, like the carved stone ibis perched over the fountain, like the frogs sculpted into the edge of the pool to symbolize rebirth. Ironic, considering nothing here ever feels new. You walk through the garden because you are instructed to. You sit by the pool because it's expected. You do not swim. You do not splash. You do not laugh. The garden is not for joy. It is for discipline in disguise. It is a performance of freedom framed by high walls. Sometimes you catch a glimmer of the Nile beyond the compound's outer walls. Just a shimmer of light on moving water. It's so close, so far. That river, it used to define your life. You washed in it, drank from it, fished alongside it, watched it flood and retreat like a god playing with the earth. Now it's a rumour, a ghost, something that continues without you. The palace air smells different depending on where you are. In the harem, it's thick with perfume. Not a single scent, but layers. Frankincense, lotus, myrrh, cedarwood, rose oil. These smells cling to everything. To your linen, your hair, your mouth, You forget what it's like to smell sweat or mud or the sharp mineral tang of river sand. You forget what people smell like when they're real, and sometimes, rarely, you're allowed into the outer sanctum, the larger palace where nobles walk, where foreign diplomats are entertained, where the pharaoh's senior wives reside. You don't touch anything in these rooms. You don't make eye contact. You step only where the floor is clear and only when told. You are not a guest, you're part of the backdrop. Something elegant, breathing furniture. The windows there are made of thin alabaster, milky, translucent. Useless for seeing, perfect for diffusing light into softness. The light in those rooms is never harsh. It flatters everything. Even the shadows are curated. You imagine what you must look like in that light. And then you remember, no one is looking. Back in the harem, time doesn't move the way it used to. There are no clocks, no bells, no calls to prayer that you're allowed to hear. Days pass in waves. Grooming, training, silence, inspection. Meals are not served. They arrive. Silent eunuchs slide dishes onto trays. Lentil paste, honeyed bread, stewed figs, pickled fish, dates. Always in small amounts. Always at the same hour. Always just enough. You do not serve yourself. You do not ask for more. The beds in the royal quarters are different. Raised platforms. Cushions stuffed with goose down. Sheets made of the softest linen. You'll never touch them, but sometimes you hear about them. From the girl who was summoned, the one whose posture changed when she came back. She doesn't say much, but she sighs differently now. A sigh that feels like a curtain being lowered. A private performance no one else was invited to. You don't ask questions. She doesn't offer answers. And you still sleep on a mat, the lights dim at dusk. Not all at once, slowly, one lamp at a time, until the corridors glow like the inside of a tomb. You lie on your side, you stare at the wall, you count the seconds between drips of water in the stone basin by the door. Sometimes you think you hear the palace breathing, or maybe it's just you. Night is supposed to bring rest, but it doesn't. Not here. Here, night brings stillness. A heavy, pressing silence. Not peaceful, oppressive, like the air is holding its breath, and you're the thing it's trying not to inhale. You lie awake most nights, listening to footsteps, to whispers, to the occasional soft sob that someone tries to stifle under a sheet. The walls don't echo in the traditional sense, but they carry secrets. You hear things you shouldn't. Names, orders, prayers. Sometimes you hear the guards outside the outer halls speaking in hushed tones. It's never anything important. Just jokes, complaints, dreams about girls they'll never touch. But it reminds you, there are men here, armed, bored, watching. You never see them, not directly, but their presence pulses through the marble like a second heartbeat. The moonlight filters through skylights in some chambers. Not yours, of course. Your room is windowless, shaded, womb-like in its stifling security. But once in a while, you're sent to help with evening rituals, and you pass through one of the upper walkways. There, you see the sky. Just for a moment. That impossible stretch of stars draped over the desert like a velvet net. You remember what it felt like to sleep under that sky. You remember cool sand beneath your feet, the chirp of crickets, the way the air tasted when it wasn't filtered through saffron and fear. Then someone clears their throat, a matron or a eunuch or a priest. You bow your head, you keep walking. The moment slips behind you, like everything else that ever made you feel whole. There are no seasons in the harem. only cycles. Your body keeps track even when you don't want it to. You bleed once a month, and each time it happens, you are marked, not punished, but marked. Someone writes it down. Someone tallies the rhythm of your fertility. You do not discuss it. You do not complain. You do not rest. Instead, you receive additional oil, maybe a charm, a soft chant spoken over your water. You are told to be grateful. You're still healthy. You're still viable. The floor of the bathing chamber is always cold, polished quartz. No matter the hour, it shocks your skin. The air smells of herbs, mint, thyme, a root you can't name but have tasted in tea before. You bathe in silence, not because it's required, no one says you must, but because the silence becomes a ritual. A quiet negotiation between your body and your mind. You scrub, you rinse, you try to forget what's been done to you, or what might be done next. The water is replaced after each use, not because of generosity, but because it's policy. Clean water for clean girls. Contamination is for peasants. The irony, of course, is that the palace is saturated with invisible filth. Cruelty, rot, emptiness dressed in luxury. Even the air feels watched. You stop singing to yourself. At first, it was a comfort. A hum. A melody from childhood, sung under your breath while sweeping or folding linen. But one day a matron hears it. She doesn't reprimand you. Not directly. She just places her hand on your shoulder and says, "Too much joy invites attention." Then she walks away. You understand. You stop singing. Instead you learn how to sit perfectly, back straight, shoulders relaxed but poised, hands folded lightly in your lap, chin tilted just enough to seem elegant, but not enough to seem proud. This is your new music, posture. You are architecture now, and the building agrees. It hums around you, not with noise, with intention. Every corridor is calculated. Every room faces exactly the right direction. North for meditation, east for prayer, south for music, west for memory. You wonder sometimes which way your heart points now, if it points anywhere at all. There's a small alcove behind the southern wall. You found it by accident months ago when you leaned too hard against a faded mural and felt the stone shift. It's not a passage, just a depression in the wall, wide enough to sit in, narrow enough to hide. You go there when you can't be seen. You don't cry there. You've forgotten how. You just sit, eyes open, breathing. That's where you first saw the scarab. It crawled across your sandal. Black, hard-shelled, ancient. A living echo of the god's favourite symbol. Rebirth, protection, the cycle of the sun. You watched it move, slow and determined, unbothered by gold or hierarchy. And for one small moment, you envied it. Not because it was free, but because it had a purpose. You aren't sure what yours is anymore. There's a woman in the next room over. You don't know her name. No one uses names here. But she cries in her sleep. Every night, not loudly, just enough for you to hear through the thin walls. She always cries the same way, like she's apologising for it. Like she's trying to take up less sound. You've never seen her face. But some nights you find yourself timing your breathing to hers, syncing your inhales with her sobs, matching rhythm like an invisible duet. It's not connection, not quite, just a reminder that someone else is breaking beside you. You've stopped dreaming mostly, or maybe you just stopped remembering. The only image that returns, again and again, is water. Not the Nile, not the bath, just deep, dark water, silent, endless, your hands floating just below the surface, your eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling of a room you can't name, and then you wake up, and you're still here. There are no clocks in the harem, no sundials, no temple bells, no servant announcing the hour. Time here is measured by repetition, by how many times the same bowl of lentils is served, by how often your linens are folded, unfolded, and then folded again because the corners weren't crisp enough, by how many oil lamps burn out before the matron signals lights out. You begin to sense time not as movement, but as sediment, layering slowly on your skin, in your bones, over your memories. The days don't pass, they accumulate. You learn to identify moments by the sounds of sandals scraping against stone, by the shuffle of trays, by the whispered breath of prayers drifting down the corridor. A concubine near your chamber has started muttering the same words each morning. Wake up still here. Sleep still here. Don't vanish between. You don't know who taught her that, or why she needs to say it. You only know that if she ever stops, you'll miss it like sunlight. The air grows stale during the hottest weeks. No breeze reaches this deep into the palace. The stones trap heat, and you feel it like a second skin. Thick, dry, clinging. Your linen clings to your back. Your scalp itches beneath perfumed oil. The metal cuffs on your wrists, decorative of course, heat up until they burn the underside of your arm. You rotate them every hour without thinking. The perfumery is always active. Someone is always mixing, crushing myrrh with pestles, steaming frankincense, mashing pomegranate seeds for pigment. The scent drifts through the corridors constantly. You no longer react to it. Smell has become background noise, except when something new enters. Last week, a girl was anointed with cedar oil. It lingered in the hallway long after she'd gone. You followed it once, just to see where it led, but it disappeared near the mosaic floor by the moon chamber. And so did she. No one speaks her name anymore. The walls are beautiful, but they lie. Every surface is inscribed with praise. Eternal joy of the harem. Blossom of the palace. Daughter of the sun. Titles that sound holy, but they're hollow. You know that now. You repeat them during practice. You chant them with a painted smile. But inside, they sound like dirges. Because the harem is not joy. It is not sunlight. It is not eternity. It is delay. It is pause. It is slow erosion dressed in gold and silk. You have seen what becomes of girls who age here. Not many do. Some are sent away. Some become servants in other parts of the palace. Others are married off to mid-level scribes or military officials. A few die quietly, fever, bleeding, falling down a stone step and hitting the wrong piece of the wrong wall. Accidents that never get written down. There's one older woman who still walks the courtyard. Her spine is curved. Her eyes are sharp. She wears the same linen as you, but her hair is gone, shaved clean. Her scalp marked with tiny scars you can't identify. She doesn't speak, but every few days she sits by the pool and stares at her reflection for hours. No one stops her. No one tells her to move. She's become invisible in a way that demands respect, or at least distance. You wonder if that will be you someday. You've lost track of how long you've been here. There's no beginning anymore. No moment that feels like a clear starting point. Your arrival was a haze of perfume and instructions. Your first week, or was it a month, passed in ritual and silence. Now you exist in a perpetual middle, a holding pattern with no destination. Occasionally, a girl is released, not into the world, into marriage. She is chosen not by Pharaoh, but by some noble, a reward for his service, a symbol of alliance, a gift from one powerful man to another. She walks out dressed in gold, draped in veils, hands trembling with fear or joy, or both. She does not look back. You watch her go, trying to decide whether she's lucky or lost. Sometimes you dream of storms, not rain, not just weather. Storms. Wind screaming across the desert. Sand slashing through air. The sky going dark like a curtain falling over the sun. And you, running barefoot across stone and dust. Hair wild, face bare, voice returned. In the dream, you're not escaping. You're arriving, and the storm is waiting for you. Like it knows your name. Then you wake up, and the air is still. The room is the same. You are the same. The storm is gone. The linens are folded neatly at the end of your mat. A small bowl of figs waits beside them. Your sandals have been cleaned. Your mirror has been polished. The mural of Isis still glows faintly on the wall. Her wings spread wide in a pose meant to comfort. But she's not comforting. Not anymore. She's just another pair of painted eyes watching you. Like all the others. So you rise, you dress, you sit, you wait. Because the harem doesn't end. It just continues. It doesn't crush you. It reshapes you. Slowly, quietly, over and over, until you no longer remember the shape you used to be. You've become part of the environment now. And the environment never leaves. They say the harem is a place of leisure, a place of luxury, a sanctuary of pleasure and stillness. That's because they don't understand what it takes to look effortless. Here, labour is constant, not the kind that leaves you with blisters or sunburn. No, this is the labour of becoming invisible art, of turning your existence into a silent performance for an audience that may never arrive. Your day begins before sunrise. Always. No alarm, no rooster. Just the dull ache in your spine and the cool air thick with incense that tells your body, it's time. Time to prepare yourself again. For nothing. For everything. The first task is washing. You're not allowed to smell like sleep. You rise from your mat and move, barefoot, to the wash basin. It is never full. Just enough water to damp behind your ears, over your wrists, along the arches of your feet. The motion must be graceful, fluid, no splashing, no clumsiness. A concubine who moves like she has purpose is a concubine who survives. You dry yourself with a square of woven flax, already stiff from overuse. No one replaces it. You don't ask. Next. Grooming. This is not vanity. This is law. Your hair must be styled. Whether it is braided, curled, coiled, or shaved depends on your assigned aesthetic that week. You do not choose. You are told. A matron instructs the grooming girls, who work in pairs, one pulling, one oiling. They speak softly to each other, never to you. They don't ask if it hurts. It always does. You learn to sit still for hours, to let them twist and pin and polish you like a ceremonial weapon. You're not permitted to flinch. Movement implies dissatisfaction, and dissatisfaction implies ungratefulness. And ungratefulness is dangerous. Then comes the makeup. You don't look in the mirror while it's applied. Mirrors are for the final reveal, not for the process. A thin brush outlines your eyes with black coal, the same colour the god Horus wears. It's meant to make you divine, mysterious, unreachable. It stings a little, but you say nothing. A dusting of malachite for green, crushed red ochre for lips and cheeks. The pigment smells like old earth and crushed beetles. You don't mind anymore. Jewellery is chosen based on rank, not yours, someone else's. If a favoured wife is in mourning, you wear silver. If there is a festival, you wear blue stones. If the pharaoh had a dream about the Nile, you wear fish-shaped earrings. You are an extension of someone else's metaphor, never your own. Your clothing is simple, and also extremely complicated. A linen shift, sheer in places, tightly belted under the ribs. The belt is decorative. It does not hold anything up. It simply reminds everyone that your body has been curated. You wear sandals with thin soles. They offer no comfort. That's not the point. You are meant to glide, not stomp. Once dressed, you line up. This is not for anything specific. It's just part of the day. Girls are lined up and inspected like fruit in a market. Matrons walk by, pointing at small imperfections. Dry elbows, crooked seams, unflattering posture. You are corrected, sometimes gently, sometimes not. One girl was slapped last week for slouching, not hard, just enough to remind her that her spine is not hers to bend. After the inspection comes instruction. Not education, instruction. You are not being taught to think. You are being taught to behave. You learn how to serve wine in silence, how to fan a noble without splashing air too loudly, how to sing praises in 3 tones, depending on the guest's title. You practice bowing until your knees tremble. You're told to hold your arms in different poses for long stretches. Lotus position, praise position, offering position. Your muscles cramp. You hold the position anyway. One session is dedicated entirely to walking. Yes, walking. You are shown how to move down a hallway without making noise, how to turn a corner without disturbing a curtain, how to exit a room without ever turning your back to a nobleman. You are told that a concubine who walks poorly brings shame upon the entire harem. This is not metaphor. It is policy. When the lessons are over, you eat. Not much. Just enough to sustain your rituals. You sit cross-legged, back straight, hands in laps, waiting for the trays. You're not allowed to choose your portion. It is served. Lentils, bread, a wedge of goat cheese, dried figs if you're lucky. Water, always lukewarm. You eat in silence. You chew slowly. You do not ask for more. Meals are not a break. They are a ceremony. Afterward it is time to rehearse your smile. Yes, rehearse. You sit before a polished copper mirror and practice smiling in different ways. Welcoming, bashful, grateful, mysterious. The matron assesses each one, adjusting your posture, your angle, your tilt. You are sculpted emotion, not real emotion. Real feelings are messy. You are not allowed to be messy. Some girls begin to speak in whispers during this time. Secret words, jokes, memories. But laughter is risky. Laughter reminds people that you are still human. That's not encouraged. You spend the afternoon waiting. Waiting for what? That is the question no one answers. You're told to be prepared. Prepared for an event that might never happen. Prepared to entertain. Prepared to serve. Prepared to smile when someone powerful forgets your name but remembers your face. And so, you sit. You fix your posture. You adjust your belt. You watch the sunlight shift across the floor tiles, like a moving sundial of boredom. Your knees ache. Your neck stiffens. But you don't relax. Not fully. Relaxation is punished here. Not with whips. With reminders. Stand up straighter. Try to look more serene. Would you smile like that in front of the pharaoh? You apologise. You always apologise, even when you're just breathing wrong. The strangest part of being a concubine isn't how much you do. It's how much you're supposed to make it look like you're not doing anything at all. Grace isn't natural. It's practiced. Smiling isn't effortless. It's rehearsed. Serenity isn't peace, it's muscle memory. You're not merely beautiful. You're actively becoming beautiful every second, under pressure, without cracking, visibly. Even your rest periods are orchestrated. There are designated hours each day when you are instructed to appear at ease. Not to actually relax, that would be indulgent, but to perform relaxation. You recline beside the pool, arranged like living decor. One leg slightly bent, chin resting delicately on the back of your hand. Your other arm draped across your lap. Soft, but not limp. No slouching, no yawning. If you close your eyes, you must do so poetically. There are servants who tend to your feet, brushing them with fragrant oils, not for comfort, but to polish you like a statue. You are not allowed to speak during these sessions unless spoken to. Even then, your words must be melodic, slow, honeyed. Once you asked what would happen if you refused to participate, if you simply lay down and slept like a person instead of a performance. The matron raised an eyebrow. Then you would be removed from the group. Removed from the group doesn't mean freed. It means silenced, reassigned, forgotten. So you smile, and you sit, and you glow beneath the weight of invisible demands. There are dances to learn. Every week, a new sequence. Not for joy. These are not dances that erupt from celebration. They are carefully measured performances of seduction and subservience. You learn to move in time with the drum, to roll your shoulders in rhythm, to flick your fingers like petals, falling in slow motion. A priest watches each routine and occasionally shakes his head. More softness, he says. Less ambition. You nod. You do it again. You repeat the routine until your joints ache and your smile becomes a threat. No one applauds. Applause is not part of the harem vocabulary, only corrections. After dance comes the etiquette drills. You're reminded, again, how to enter a room. There is a right foot and a wrong foot, a correct number of steps before stopping, an angle of ball that signals reverence, but not desperation. Your eyes must remain low, except when briefly perfectly lifted to show you're aware, present, and humble. But not too humble. That's submissive. Submissive is unattractive. You must hint at strength, but not so much that it feels like resistance. Being a concubine is a balancing act performed on a knife's edge. Some girls stumble, a missed cue, a stutter, an untimely blush. You don't laugh. You don't smirk. You look away because empathy is almost as dangerous as failure. If the pharaoh himself enters the harem, rare, but not impossible, your response must be immediate and silent. You fall to your knees in perfect synchronicity with the others. You hold the pose. Your spine aches. Your knees press into unforgiving stone. You stay there until dismissed. Once, a girl rose too soon. She was not punished in front of you. She was simply not seen again. There is embroidery, endless embroidery. Each concubine is expected to contribute to the palace linens, decorative cloths, ceremonial veils, ornate cushions. Not because the palace needs them, the storerooms are already overflowing, but because the act of stitching is seen as feminine, noble, refined. You prick your finger daily. Sometimes it bleeds. You keep going. Needles are sharp, but silence cuts deeper. Some tasks are assigned without reason. One day, you are told to sort beads by colour. Hundreds of them, spilled onto a tray. You sort. It takes hours. The next day, the same tray appears, unsorted. You are told to do it again. No explanation. You obey. Not because it makes sense, but because questioning would mark you. You're reminded, in subtle ways, that the purpose of your labour is not productivity. It is obedience. Stillness is not rest. It is containment. Even reading, if you're literate, is discouraged, unless it's religious. Unless it flatters the pharaoh. Unless it makes you easier to manage. You may copy hymns. You may recite poems about gods. But stories, dreams, fantasies, no. You're not here to imagine. You are here to reflect, like polished copper, whatever the palace projects onto you. You clean, but only symbolically. You wipe the rim of your water dish. You brush lint from your sandals. You polish jewellery that hasn't been worn in weeks. If dirt appears in the corner of your mat, you're expected to kneel and sweep it with your palm, collect it in a reed dish, and discard it silently. Not because it matters, but because someone is always watching to see if you let it sit. You're tested daily. Never with exams. Always with expectation. How long can you hold your smile? How gracefully can you kneel? How gently can you cry, if you must cry, without disturbing the atmosphere? You're exhausted. But exhaustion is not an excuse. Once you fell asleep during posture practice, just for a moment, a blink too long. The matron passed by. She said nothing. But your name was not called for selection that week, or the next. You became invisible for a while. It felt like drowning in slow motion. And yet, despite everything, you continue. You rise. You comb your hair. You practice your silence. You fold your linens. You pour the wine. You bow exactly 17 degrees. You place one foot behind the other and glide across the room like someone who still believes she belongs there. And if you falter, you do it beautifully, because that's the rule. Fall apart as slowly and as gracefully as possible. Some girls adapt too well. You start to notice them after a few months. The ones who glide across the floor like vapour, who never speak above a whisper, who fold themselves into corners like artfully arranged drapery. They're perfect, but not the kind of perfect that makes them enviable. They're the kind of perfect that makes you uncomfortable. They've become the palace's favourite tools, not for their beauty, but for their predictability. Their faces hold the same expressions every day. Their hands never fidget. They speak only when addressed, and when they do, their voices sound like someone else's memory. You want to ask them if they still dream, but you don't, because deep down, you already know the answer. This is what happens when the labour of obedience is performed long enough. The performance becomes permanent, and part of you is afraid, not of becoming them, but of realising you already have. The palace feeds you just enough to maintain your glow. Meals are scheduled, portioned, and curated for appearance. Soft foods, nothing too aromatic, no onions, no garlic, nothing that lingers on the breath. Your body is a temple, not for your worship, but for someone else's rituals. Once a week, you are weighed, not on a scale. Those don't exist here. You are weighed by eye. The matrons pinch your arm, prod your stomach, lift your chin, and tilt your face in the light. If you're too thin, you're told to eat more. If you're too full, your portions are reduced. Either way, your hunger is never your own. And it's not just your weight that's measured. Your usefulness is under constant review. There's a hierarchy, even among the obedient. Those who serve wine well are marked for public ceremonies. Those who sing sweetly are called on during moon feasts. Those who move with effortless grace may one day be seen by the pharaoh himself. You're not told which one you are. You're only told to try harder. You hear about girls being retired. That's the word they use. Retired, not cast out, not discarded, not forgotten. Retired. Like a necklace placed in a box. like a scroll returned to a dusty shelf. No one knows where they go. Maybe to another palace, maybe to a distant province, maybe to a shallow grave somewhere behind the olive groves. No one asks. Asking is impolite, dangerous. So you keep working. You work at stillness. You work at silence. You work at never appearing tired. Because if they see you crack, just once, the matron might write your name a little softer that day, and softer still the next, and eventually not at all. There is no such thing as a sick day in the harem. If you are ill, you're quarantined, not cared for. You're relocated to the healing room, a shadowy side chamber with 2 mats, a clay bowl, and a dried-up priestess who no longer speaks. She watches you like a cat watching a dying bird. If you recover, you're allowed to return. If you don't, someone else is given your mat. You once knew a girl who got a fever. She shivered through the night, teeth clacking like castanets. She whispered for help, but no one came. Not because they were cruel, but because they had been warned. Sickness spreads. Compassion is not worth infection. She was gone by morning. The mat was washed, the curtain was replaced. No one spoke her name. Her scent lingered in the hallway for 3 more days. Then it, too, disappeared. You now keep your pain quiet, a pulled muscle. You smile through it. A swollen eye. You blame the oil. A cough. You hold your breath until the tickle passes. You protect your position, not your body. That's how you survive. Once, a visiting priest gave a sermon to the harem girls. He spoke of balance, how the gods value order, how every part of creation has a role. He compared the palace to the heavens, Pharaoh as the sun, queens as stars, scribes as planets. And you, he said, are the sky. You wanted to believe him. You wanted to think of yourself as vast, important, beautiful. But as he walked away, one of the older girls whispered, "He meant we're supposed to be empty." You didn't laugh. You didn't cry. You just sat there, blinking in rhythm with the lantern flame. There are no mirrors in the training chamber. You're not supposed to watch yourself practice. That would be indulgent. Instead, the matrons tell you what you look like. They correct. They mould. They define you. You no longer trust your own reflection. It changes daily, depending on whether someone said you looked tired, or radiant, or forgettable. You don't know what to believe anymore, so you stop trying. The floor of the practice chamber is painted with faint lines, guidance markers for how far to step, where to stand, where to kneel. They are not discussed. They are learned through repetition, through reprimands, through soft taps with a rod made of polished wood. You dream about those lines sometimes. They stretch forever in every direction, across deserts and rivers and rooftops, turning the world into one giant grid of movement and submission. And in the dream, you're always just outside the lines, just a toe too far, just a breath out of place, and the rod is coming. Then you wake up, you sit up, you smooth your shift, and you try again. Because the worst thing here isn't failure. It's being seen failing. By now, your body is trained to perform before your thoughts even arrive. You kneel before you think of kneeling. You smile before you feel anything close to joy. Your hands move through rituals, pouring wine, folding linen, adjusting veils, with mechanical precision. Your reflection is no longer something you study. It's something you check for errors. You have become maintenance in human form. But it is not just your body they demand. It's your time, all of it. Even time that doesn't look like work is claimed by expectation. There's something they call listening hours. They're not posted anywhere. You don't sign up. You just know, through observation, through whispered warnings, that sometimes you are expected to be present, alert, silent, and available. You sit in waiting chambers, arranged in rows like a display of figurines. You're not told who is coming. You're not told if anyone will. The door may stay shut. The matron may walk by without comment, or a noble may appear, pausing only long enough to glance at you. That glance is everything. A glance means you were noticed. A lack of one means you failed. You never speak during these hours. The silence is thick, ceremonial. One girl once coughed, just once. She was removed. The sound broke the illusion. Her punishment was never explained. It didn't have to be. Other times, you're summoned for display. Not to serve, not to assist, but to be seen like a flower at the centre of a banquet table. You're positioned in a courtyard during visiting hours for ambassadors, generals, and foreign nobles. You're not naked. That would be too crude. You're robed in translucent linen, perfumed, jewelled, seated beside a harp you're not allowed to play. You're there to represent opulence, fertility, the pharaoh's power, his ability to collect, to preserve, to command beauty. You sit for hours. You're not allowed to fidget. If a bee lands on your arm, you do not flinch. If sweat rolls down your back in the heat, you do not wipe it. You simply be perfectly, without complaint, without need. This is your job. And make no mistake, this is labour. There are girls who fail at stillness. Their minds crack. You see it in their eyes first. A flicker of something not permitted. Panic, rage, grief. The emotions rise like steam from a hidden spring. And then, if they're lucky, they are quietly escorted away for reflection. If they're unlucky, they are kept among you as a warning. Muted, heavily perfumed, dressed even more extravagantly than before, like a corpse prepared for a wedding. You see them? You nod to them. You never ask questions. Not even when one stops blinking. Your hands begin to ache from inactivity. The joints stiffen from too much posture. The muscles along your spine tighten like ropes pulled too taut. You stretch in secret. Behind a curtain. In a bath. In the dark. You do not ask for massage. Touch is not given here unless ordered. You're never held unless it is for someone else's pleasure. You're never embraced unless it is to reassure a noble that his kingdom is thriving. Affection is rationed. You dream of small, forgotten comforts. Your mother braiding your hair. Your sister handing you a fig without being told. The softness of a goat's nose against your palm. These things visit you in sleep and leave nothing but longing in their place. Even music is labour here. You are taught to sing, not songs of feeling, but hymns of flattery. Odes to Pharaoh, lullabies for gods, chants of praise. You sing on command in groups. Harmony is mandatory. Dissonance is punished with silence the following day. A mute punishment. No one speaks to you. You are treated like air. You begin to wish someone would strike you instead. At least then you'd exist. There is no applause, only nods. Occasionally a well enough. That's the highest praise allowed in the harem. Well enough. It means you were acceptable. It means you didn't fail. It means you lived another day inside the machine. There are moments, tiny traitorous moments, when you forget you are labouring. You catch your reflection in the water. You catch the scent of your own perfume and find it beautiful. You see the tilt of your shoulder in shadow and think, for a heartbeat, maybe I am as graceful as they say. then the feeling vanishes. Because it was never yours. It was a performance applauding itself. You do not own your beauty, you maintain it. You do not express your grace. You deploy it. You do not rest. You reset. By the end of the day, your body collapses gently into its corner of the mat. No one undresses you. No one tucks you in. You peel off your shift slowly. Fold it carefully. Lie down flat. Not curled. Curling is improper. You face the ceiling. You close your eyes. And still, even in sleep, you worry about your posture. Because in the harem, there is no such thing as off. You're on display, even in the dark. There is no such thing as equality in the harem, not even among the concubines. You would think, perhaps, that being one of many, one girl among dozens, maybe hundreds, would create a sense of sisterhood. That shared suffering might build unity. That confinement might create empathy. It doesn't. Instead, it creates competition. Quiet. Constant. Engineered. The first thing you learn about the harem is that the hierarchy is invisible to the untrained eye. You can't see it on the surface. All the women wear linen. All the women smile when spoken to. All the women kneel before the pharaoh's name. But beneath that performance is a meticulous ladder. You're either climbing it or being crushed by it. At the top are the royal wives, not the queen, she lives in a palace wing of her own, but the secondary wives, the high-ranked favourites. They are few in number and absolute in control. Their word inside these walls carries weight only second to the pharaoh himself. Their glances are law. Their moods are weather. If one is displeased with you, the next morning you'll find your jewellery has been reassigned. Your portion is shrunk. Your name is missing from the chore rota, which sounds like a reward until you realise that exclusion is the first step to replacement. They don't punish you, they erase you. Just below them are the favoured concubines. You'll know them not by what they wear, but by how others move around them. Slower, softer, with an edge of caution. They speak less often, but when they do, everyone listens. They are not necessarily more beautiful, just more remembered. The pharaoh has spoken to them, maybe twice, maybe once. That's enough. Then come the aspirants, girls like you, eager not to rise but simply not to fall. You observe, you mimic, you polish yourself like a weapon, hoping to be drawn. You smile until your cheeks twitch. You lower your eyes at exactly the right angle. You exist in a state of perpetual application, like a servant hoping to be noticed, but never noticed too much. Below that, the invisible girls, the overlooked, the not yet noticed or the once glanced at and never again. They orbit the edge of the chamber, never quite inside the circle. They speak too quietly, or too much. Their eyes wander. Their posture isn't perfect. No one says this aloud. But then punishment is presence without participation. And beneath them, the punished. There are no whips here, no chains. This isn't a dungeon. It's far more refined. Here, humiliation is the preferred method of control. Humiliation is art. It begins subtly. Your favourite hair oil goes missing. Your sandals are replaced with a rougher pair. Your name is moved to the bottom of the prayer roster. When you kneel, no one kneels beside you. When you sing, no one harmonises. Your shifts return from laundering still damp. Your lamp runs out of oil before everyone else's. These things are not accidents. They are signals. You have fallen. If it continues, it escalates. You're assigned undesirable tasks. Carrying the incense burner that always smokes too much, holding the heavy ceremonial fan, serving wine from the back of the procession, where no one sees your face. You're not corrected. You're not scolded. That would be acknowledgement. Instead, they let you fade. Other girls are told not to speak with you. Not cruelly. Just tactically. Affiliation lowers value. The matron begins to greet you last. Or not at all. You're asked to redo your makeup twice, then 3 times, until your face feels like a chalk painting in the rain. Eventually, you're not asked at all. You sit while others are painted. You sit until you stop expecting it. You become furniture in the room. And furniture doesn't complain. But the most brutal humiliation isn't being ignored. It's being used. Sometimes, when a favoured concubine grows too proud, too confident, she's ordered to exchange duties with someone beneath her. That someone is often you. You wear her shift. You walk her route. You serve her cup. She watches you with a smile, like carved ivory. Sharp, brittle, polished. The room watches too. No one says the word punishment, but everyone knows. And if she's truly out of favour, the matron tells you to do it well, to outshine her, to remind her that even beauty is replaceable. The humiliation travels in both directions, upward and down. Senior concubines mentor the newer girls. That's what they call it, mentorship. What it means is correction, thinly veiled cruelty, and a ritual of comparison designed to maintain the illusion of meritocracy. You hold the wine too high. You're blinking too often. Your silence is stiff, not serene. Don't pout. It makes your lips look cheap. You thank them every time, because if you don't, they tell the matron you're ungrateful. And ungrateful girls are sent to the silent chamber, a windowless room where you kneel alone for hours, surrounded by silence so complete it roars in your ears. You come out of it quieter, always, sometimes permanently, and still you try. You try because humiliation here isn't just a possibility. It's a system, designed to refine, designed to thin the ranks, designed to teach you that perfection isn't enough. Because even perfection, in the wrong mood, can be seen as arrogance. So you shave your arms again, even though there's no visible hair. You realign your belt, even though it's centered. You smile wider, even though your cheeks ache, because the cost of existing improperly is subtle. But the cost of being humiliated is infinite, and it never ends, because the ladder never ends. And even when you climb, the rungs are greased. The harem is not just a home, it's a chessboard. And you, like every girl here, are a piece. But no one tells you which kind. You wake each morning wondering if you've been promoted or demoted in the night. It only takes a glance to find out. You look for signs. Has your shift been placed higher in the folding stack? Has your tray of breakfast been given 1 extra fig? Are you called first or fifth when the matron arrives? These are not accidents. They are signals, positioning. You might think the palace sends messages through words, but here, status is spoken through linen weights and the placement of a single bronze comb. You learn to read these cues faster than you read hieroglyphs. If you're lucky, you never guess wrong. If you're not, you find out the hard way. Like the girl who bowed too shallow to a favoured concubine. She was made to stand outside the prayer hall for 3 days in full sun with no head covering. Not a punishment, officially. Just a consequence of poor orientation. Everyone knew it wasn't about the bow. It was about reminding the others to bow deeper. The social ladder isn't fixed. It's not even visible. But it moves constantly. Like a tide that only takes. What makes a girl rise? A glance from the pharaoh. A whispered compliment passed from a steward. A knight summoned and returned with a smile. Even a rumour, a well-placed, strategically timed rumour, can lift a girl into the next circle of respect. And what makes a girl fall? Almost anything. A smirk mistaken for sarcasm. A cough during a ceremony. A stumble on the marble floor. One mispronounced title. One forgotten proverb. One laugh too loud, or too long, or too real. Favour is flammable. It catches easily, burns brightly, and leaves nothing but smoke. That's why everyone watches everyone else. No one admits it, of course, but every girl here is a full-time observer. Your eyes are trained to track smiles, posture, tone. You memorise who eats with whom, who braids whose hair, who is mentioned in the matron's reports. If someone spends 5 extra minutes in the garden, the entire chamber knows by nightfall. You catalogue the rise and fall of others like it's a survival manual. Because it is. But the worst humiliation? It's not the silent treatment. It's not public correction. It's not even being forgotten. It's being pitied. When someone who once competed with you, who once raised their eyebrow at your sandals, or narrowed their eyes when you were summoned to the dressing chamber, starts offering help. You know you've fallen, not enough to be punished, just enough to be irrelevant. They smile with soft eyes. They offer advice no one asks for. They remind you to straighten your spine, or polish your copper mirror, or comb your hair with a gentler touch. They are kind, terribly kind, because they no longer see you as a threat. You are not a rival anymore. You are background. And yet, despite the pettiness, the cruelty, the cutthroat etiquette, you long for connection. You are human after all. You crave it like warmth in a cold chamber. So you take risks. You whisper with the girl beside you during embroidery. You share your dried dates with the one who dropped hers. You help braid a new girl's hair, gently, without instruction. These tiny acts of tenderness feel rebellious, dangerous, because they are. Companionship dilutes competition. Friendship breeds alliances, and alliances threaten the system. So when the matrons catch wind of intimacy, they intervene, subtly. The girls are reassigned to different sleeping chambers, rotated to new chore clusters. One is invited to serve at a distant villa. One is accused of inappropriate conversation. The accusations are vague, always. Unbecoming behaviour, uncontrolled familiarity, disturbance of decorum. You're not punished for being kind. You're punished for being attached. And so you learn, again, to keep your gestures shallow, your smiles brief, your stories impersonal. You laugh, but never first. You offer, but never twice. You listen, but never long. Because intimacy, in this place, is a luxury item, too expensive, too easily stolen. The only safe companion is memory. So you talk to yourself silently. You replay conversations from before. The way your mother used to say your name. The look your sister gave you when she stole a plum from your basket. The songs your village girls sang as they stomped mud into clay for bricks. You hold these memories the way the other girls hold their makeup palettes. Carefully, reverently, knowing that once dropped, they shatter. You would trade a month's ration of perfume for one afternoon of honest laughter. But that's not the currency here. Here, the currency is deference. And the only thing cheaper than joy is dignity. Favour is a performance. And you are always auditioning. There is no announcement when you've been noticed. No formal declaration that you have risen in rank. Instead, you're invited, quietly, casually, as if it means nothing. A steward appears in the corridor after morning ritual. He doesn't say your name. He doesn't have to. He tilts his head toward the antechamber. You follow. Every eye in the hall follows you too, though none turn their heads. This is the palace. Everyone has learned to observe without appearing to look. You walk like you've done this before, slowly, confidently, even if you're shaking. Inside the chamber, a new shift is laid out for you. Finer linen, dyed faintly with safflower. You're helped into it without explanation. Your hair is re-oiled, your wrists scented. A pendant is fastened around your neck. A simple golden disc etched with a lotus. That means presentation. You don't know who it's for. It doesn't matter. This isn't about the man who might see you. It's about the women who already have. They watch you now with a special kind of silence. Some are pleased for you. Some are sharpening their future corrections. Some are memorizing your posture, in case it becomes necessary to imitate or undermine you later. The higher you rise, the narrower the space becomes, because at the top of the harem there isn't power, only proximity. And proximity is dangerous. There is no solidarity among the favoured, no shared crown, just a mirror held up by the pharaoh's attention, and everyone scrambling to remain visible inside it. The matron begins treating you differently. Not kindly. She never was unkind, but with less suspicion. She corrects you less. She invites you to speak occasionally. She passes you notes instead of instructions. Small things. But in this world, small things mean everything. You're given tasks of importance now. You carry offerings during ceremonies. You serve wine not from behind the curtain, but beside the pillar, in view of the dais. You are placed near music, near incense, near light. You are becoming decoration in the most sacred sense, a body turned into symbol. And this is when the humiliation evolves. It no longer comes from authority, it comes from below. The same girls who once sat beside you in silence now pause longer when they greet you. Their compliments are layered with meaning. Your smile is so well practiced. You always carry yourself so confidently, almost like a queen. Almost. They never touch you anymore. No hand on your shoulder. No fingers brushing yours as they pass the tray. You are now too elevated for casual contact. And yet, still beneath anything real. You are important but not protected, favoured but not safe. This position is the most fragile of all, because now, when you fall, and you will fall, it won't be silent, it will be public. Everyone will see, everyone will participate. The ladder must maintain its illusion, and that means someone must always be descending. One girl, once the most praised in your circle, falls overnight. No one knows why. Maybe she rolled her eyes. Maybe she was heard humming too freely. Maybe the pharaoh found her less radiant than expected. It doesn't matter. The result is immediate. She is stripped of her pendant, moved to the outer chamber. Her linen is downgraded. She is placed at the back of every procession. And worst of all, no one speaks to her, not even to scorn her. She becomes a living example. You pass her once in the bathing hall. She does not meet your eyes. Not out of shame? Out of preservation? You nod slightly. She does not return it. You both understand the stakes. The farther you rise, the more you're expected to discipline others. It's never phrased that way, of course. It's called guidance. Upholding standards. But the truth is, you're now a weapon used by the system to maintain itself. If a girl's veil is crooked, you correct it. loudly enough for others to hear. If someone stumbles in a group movement, you're expected to hold your poise, a living contrast to her mistake. You're not just surviving now, you're being used to remind others how to. It's humiliating in its own way, because your worth is no longer about who you are, but how effectively you can make others feel lesser. That's how you maintain altitude here, by standing on the shoulders of the shamed. And the fear never leaves, ever. Because one day someone will do it to you. Correct your step, redo your veil, receive a pendant heavier than yours. Then your necklace will be lighter, your robe more sheer, your placement less central, until eventually you're not summoned at all. So you keep smiling, you keep bowing, you keep watching the girls behind you, not out of spite, but out of reflex. Because in this place, everyone behind you is someone who could replace you. And every kind word you receive might be the first note of a soft, well-practiced goodbye. Eventually, the rituals of humiliation stop feeling like punishment. They start feeling like order. The first time you see a girl scolded in front of everyone, you flinch. The second time, you watch. The third time, you take mental notes, where she went wrong, how long the matron paused, whether the girl cried, whether the tears helped. You are not cruel. You are simply adapting. This is the quiet truth no one says aloud. Shame, here, is instructional. Girls who are humiliated often improve. Some even rise again. Their posture sharpens, their smile steady. Their silence deepens into something refined. A girl who stumbles and is corrected becomes an example, not of failure, but of the palace's mercy. She is proof that the system works. The girls who are never corrected, they vanish. The unremarked are the ones truly in danger. If the matron stops noticing you, if no one bothers to fix your veil, or reposition your arms during morning inspection, you begin to wonder, am I already being erased? Correction, in its twisted way, is a form of care, so you begin to seek it. Carefully. You say the prayer a beat too slow. You pour the oil just slightly off rhythm. Not to fail, never to fail, but to be noticed. To be reminded you're still part of the dance. Attention, even harsh attention, becomes currency. You observe the favoured girls for signs of struggle. Their rituals are more complex than yours. Their dresses tighter. Their makeup more precise. Their assignments riskier. A cracked coal line is scandal. A trembling hand during wine service is political. One slip and they return to the masses, humbled and over-perfumed, like a shrine no one visits anymore. The humiliation isn't just imposed by the matrons or the structure. It seeps into the way girls treat each other. It becomes etiquette. Beneath every polite smile is a checklist of flaws. Under every compliment, a measurement. Oh, your skin looks brighter today. Are you drinking more water? Translation: you looked dull yesterday. That shift really suits your shoulders. Not everyone can wear that cut. Translation: you don't usually wear it well. You learn to speak this language. You don't want to. But if you don't, you fall behind. You become the girl who doesn't understand nuance. And misunderstanding nuance is worse than breaking a rule. It means you're untrainable. Sometimes the humiliation turns festive. The pharaoh's court hosts ceremonies, and the concubines are expected to perform. Songs, dances, recitations of devotion. But not all girls are selected to participate. Some are chosen to assist, others to stand in ornamental silence, and a few are chosen for something more pointed, ceremonial contrast. A favoured girl is placed in the centre, beautiful, regal, surrounded by lesser ranked girls dressed similarly but deliberately off. A belt too tight, hair pinned asymmetrically, jewellery made of bronze instead of gold. They don't call this humiliation, they call it emphasis. You are part of the background designed to make someone else glow. You're the shadow cast to highlight the light. And the worst part, you do it well. You bow with grace. You sing in perfect harmony. You smile when she smiles. Because if you do it wrong, you're removed. If you do it right, you may be chosen next time. Maybe. That's the currency of the harem. May, might, if. Every small victory feels like breathing through a reed, temporary, dependent on stillness, and easily pulled away. You begin to prepare for your own downfall long before it happens. You watch how others fall. You memorize the signs. The quiet cough that isn't illness. The sudden overpraise from the matron. The kiss of death. The unexpected gift of a new robe, far too fine for your standing, as if to test how you'll wear it. You learn not to trust anything wrapped in silk. One girl laughs too freely at a nobleman's joke. She is corrected mid-laughter, told to sit, told to reflect. The laughter dies. Not just hers, everyone's. Another receives a gift from a steward, a fan of ivory carved with lotus petals. The next morning she is summoned not to service, but to silence. The gift was unauthorized, her smile too wide, her acceptance too visible. She is reassigned to temple duties, a lower form of visibility, less fragrance, more kneeling. No one says it was punishment, but no one wants to follow. And then there are the ceremonies of expulsion. Rare, formal, always done in the name of purity. A concubine is summoned before dawn. She is not dressed by her attendants. She is given one shift, no oils, no paints, no jewellery. She is walked barefoot through the inner hallways. She is presented to the priestesses, not the matron, and spoken over in a language not meant to be understood. Then she is led out. Where to? No one knows. She does not return. Her mat is removed before breakfast. Her scent is scrubbed from the basin. Her name is forbidden for 3 days. And when the ban is lifted, it is not spoken again. Not because of fear, but because of something worse. Irrelevance. She became the lesson. And that is the final humiliation. Not being shouted at, not being struck, not even being cast out, but being remembered only as a warning. And in the harem, everyone is someone else's warning. To understand the harem is to understand that belief isn't just part of life, it's part of control. You're not here merely to serve, you are here to symbolize. Every step you take, every chant you whisper, every offering you hold in your trembling fingers, it all means something bigger than you, something older, and you're reminded of that constantly. The palace doesn't run on rules, it runs on ritual. At sunrise you kneel facing the east wall, not because anyone explained why, but because everyone else does. The priests say that the pharaoh is the son of Ra, the sun god, and as Ra rises each morning, so too must you. Not out of logic, out of reverence, out of fear. The harem courtyard is carved with symbols, eyes of Horus, ankhs, scarabs, falcons, cobras. You pass them every day. You touch them sometimes by habit, not because they protect you, but because if you don't, you feel exposed. And in this place, superstition is armour. There's a chant you say before entering the perfuming chamber. 4 lines, no variations. Always in the same tone, the same pace. It's not written anywhere. You just learn it, like breathing. The older girls whisper it to you once, then never again. You never ask what it means. You just say it, because that's safer. In the harem, knowledge is not taught. It is absorbed, like scent, like smoke. The temple scribes say the pharaoh is divine, not a man, but a living god. His touch sanctifies, his gaze purifies. You're told that to be chosen by him is not a reward, it is a blessing. Even if he never speaks to you, even if he forgets your name, even if he visits your chamber once and never again, you're supposed to be grateful. You've heard the word sacred so often, it's started to lose shape. Everything is sacred. Your robe, your silence, your walk, the way you pour water, the way you bow, even your suffering, especially your suffering. Because here, pain isn't just tolerated, it's interpreted. Proof that you are being refined. The matron tells you that stillness is the highest form of obedience. A quote, supposedly from an old queen's diary. It's been repeated so often, it's become gospel. You write it in the sand outside your chamber when no one is looking. Then you smooth it away with your foot. You don't want anyone to think you're meditating too hard. That's suspicious. Overbelief is just as dangerous as underbelief. Balance. That's the word they use. The gods value balance. If you smile too much, you are unserious. If you smile too little, you are ungrateful. If you weep too often, you are unstable. If you never weep at all, you are stone. And stone cannot be moulded. You are told repeatedly that the gods are always watching. Not just the pharaoh's gods, your own, your mother's, the rivers, the winds. There's no escaping them. You are their offering, their example, their responsibility. If you fall ill, it is because you failed to honour them. If you rise in rank, it is because they favoured your soul. If you are ignored, well, perhaps they are testing your humility. That's the most common explanation for suffering. A test. Everything here is a test. And if you pass the test, you might be reborn. Not literally. No one dies here to be reborn, but spiritually, socially, symbolically. A girl who was once a background figure might suddenly be praised in a sermon. Her name might be written in calligraphy and pinned outside the anointing room. She might be asked to recite prayers on behalf of the harem during a festival. Not because she's holy, but because she has been seen. And once seen, she is expected to embody belief. You learn to pray with your eyes open, to repeat chants with a steady voice, even if your heart is broken, to make offerings without expectation, to kneel even when your legs are numb, because the gods, and the priests, and the matrons and the palace reward consistency, not sincerity. In this place, belief is not what you feel, it's what you perform. You are taught to believe in harmony, not the musical kind, but the cosmic kind. That the world is a delicate balance between chaos and order, and that every time you misstep, you tilt that balance. That every poorly tied sash or late arrival or crooked braid might invite disorder. And if disorder arrives, it is your fault. So you become meticulous. You iron your linen with a hot stone. You tie and untie your belt until it rests at exactly the right height. You murmur the names of the gods as you brush your teeth with crushed salt and mint. Not because you believe it helps, but because not doing it would feel like cursing yourself. The walls of the harem are painted with stories, goddesses birthing sons, pharaohs rising from lotus blooms, serpents devouring time. You stare at them while you kneel for inspection. You wonder which story is yours. Probably none of them, but still, you imagine. One day, a girl you know finds a scarab beetle crawling across her bed mat. She gasps. She cups it gently. She walks it all the way to the garden and places it beneath a sycamore tree. Then she kneels and prays. The matron sees her. The next morning, that girl's name is added to the inner rotation. Was it the beetle, the prayer, the performance? No one knows. But for the next week, half the harem places breadcrumbs beside their mats before bed, just in case the gods are watching through insects. The gods are everywhere, but they only speak through approved mouths. You are not allowed to interpret omens, not officially. Only priests can do that. If you dream of a hawk flying backward or the river boiling, you're not supposed to wonder what it means. You're supposed to tell the scribe, then forget you ever saw it. If the dream matters, someone with authority will translate it for you. If it doesn't, you were simply dreaming, and that too is your place. You notice this early, how spiritual knowledge is treated like a locked garden, beautiful, close, forbidden. There are girls here who can read, not many. Fewer still who can write, even fewer trusted with sacred symbols. Those girls wear different sashes. They chant louder. They are given longer baths, more incense, better silence. Knowledge is holiness, but not for you. Not really. You are not meant to understand. You are meant to feel awed, and you do, at first. The festivals are overwhelming, blinding, divine theatre. You remember your first festival of Opet, the drums, the myrrh, the painted bulls, the banners that stretched so long they disappeared into the sun. You were part of the ceremonial line, 4th row, outer ring, facing the priests. You wore green for fertility. You held a palm branch in both hands and did not let it tremble. The pharaoh passed by on a golden bark, carried on the shoulders of 12 oiled men. He did not look at you, but you wept, not because he saw you, but because he didn't need to. He was the sun, you were dust, and somehow that felt holy. The older you get, the more you understand that belief is not just for comfort, it's for discipline. You are told that the gods reward obedience, that they watch how straight you sit, that they count how many times you repeat the sacred phrases without stumbling, that mispronunciations are heard, that envy can stain your aura, that bad thoughts will curl your posture. A crooked back, they say, is the sign of a crooked spirit, so you adjust your spine, even when you sleep, even when no one is watching. There's a room in the palace called the Hall of Ears. You're told it was built with acoustics so precise that even whispers can be heard from across the chamber. The walls are carved with the symbol of the ear, over and over, as if the room itself is listening. You pass it on your way to evening inspection. Every single time you lower your voice. Every girl does. You don't know if it's true. You don't care. The fear is the same. They say the gods live in statues, that they blink when no one sees, that if you walk too quickly past the wrong altar, your dreams will rot from the inside out, that a disrespectful glance can sour milk, that your womb can dry from careless words, that your voice can crack if you sing with pride instead of gratitude. And these aren't idle stories. Girls have been punished for divine offence. One spilled wine during a hymn. The tray slipped. Her hands were wet. She apologised, fast, low, scared. But the stain touched the priest's sandals. She was assigned to purification. 30 days without speaking. No oils, no perfumes. Only ritual baths, morning and night, and strict prayer recitation. You saw her after 10 days. Her voice was gone. She looked thinner, cleaner, quieter. She didn't blink much anymore. When she rejoined the group, she smiled, but not with her eyes. You heard someone say she was closer to the gods now, and maybe she was, because after that, she never cried again. That's what belief does here. It replaces you. It shapes the hollow. You don't question it, not because you're convinced, but because questioning implies a soul still your own. And in the harem, that's not something you get to keep. Instead, you wear your belief like jewellery. You recite the seasonal chants. You learn the names of all 42 judges of the underworld. You memorise the correct order of blessings for fertility, humility, composure, silence. You sing the 4 praises every solstice, loud enough to be heard, soft enough to sound devout. And still, there are rules you didn't know existed until you broke them. Once, you asked why incense was lit clockwise around the chamber and not counterclockwise. The matron's eyes didn't blink. Because the sun moves east to west, she said. Are you wiser than the sun? You apologised. You never asked again. From then on, you repeated everything exactly, even when it made no sense, even when you forgot what the ritual was for, even when it contradicted the last one. Because logic isn't part of the religion here. Pattern is, repetition is, stillness is, doubt, even internal, is treason. There are stories carved into the walls, not just of gods, but of women, concubines, priestesses, daughters, wives. You read the one near the eastern gate every morning. It shows a girl standing with a lotus at her breast and a falcon above her head. A line of text curves beneath her feet. She who was most silent stood closest to the divine. You repeat that sentence to yourself when your knees ache from kneeling, when your voice cracks mid-chant, when the prayers lose their meaning. Silence is closeness. Pain is approval. Belief is endurance. And the gods love endurance, especially when it looks like grace. In the harem, every day is a holy day, even when it's not. That's the trick. The palace doesn't need real miracles to control you. It just needs ceremony, and enough people watching it. There are scheduled rites, of course. The Feast of Lamps, the Night of the Black Jackal, the Spring Blessing. These are loud, public, lavish. You rehearse your posture for weeks in advance. You are told what colours to wear, what fruit to place on the altar, what verses to mouth in time with the music. There is no space for improvisation, but it's the unscheduled rituals that shape you more, the ones that appear without warning. A fire in a brazier burns strangely. A priest declares it an omen. Suddenly, the harem must fast for 2 days, not for punishment, for balance, for harmony, for the health of the pharaoh. You nod. You don't ask why. A raven lands on the roof and caws at dusk. You are ordered to clean your chamber 3 times that night, floor to ceiling, in silence. The matron calls it cleansing the air. She says, birds speak for the forgotten gods. That sentence is never explained. You write it in your head like a line of sacred law, because in this place, unpredictability is holy. Not because it's divine, but because it's useful. When belief can change at any moment, when rituals shift without pattern, when the sacred is redefined daily, you stop looking for meaning. You focus on obedience. That's the point. There's no comfort in the gods, only pressure. But you still cling to them. Because if the gods are real, then maybe your suffering matters. And if they're not, then everything you've become is for nothing. You would rather kneel for eternity than accept that there was never anyone watching. That's the secret behind the palace's religion, the fear of insignificance. Every month, the scribes write new proverbs and distribute them across the chambers. You are expected to memorize at least 3. Sometimes they contradict last month's proverbs. No one mentions it. You recite anyway. One month says, "The woman who waits is the woman who is worthy." The next says, "The woman who moves swiftly honors the gods." You learn to do both. One in public, one in secret. And that's how you live. In double thought. One belief for the matron. One for the mirror. The rituals continue. You are taught to whisper blessings into your water before you drink it, so the gods may enter gently. You are taught to touch your right shoulder 3 times before stepping into a sunbeam, so Ra sees your humility. You are told not to eat figs during the lunar eclipse. They spoil the womb under the dark moon. You don't know if any of it is true, but you do it, because everyone does it. And that's the only truth that matters here. Conformity. Even a silence is curated. During the hour of shadows, the time after evening meal, before final prayers, you are not permitted to speak. Not aloud. Not in whispers. Not with your eyes. It's considered the moment when the gods walk the earth in their softest forms. You kneel in your corner. You stare at the wall. You count your breaths. Slowly. You do not think about your old life. You do not think about escape. You think about the gods. About the sound they might make if they walked past you. About the way your breath might fog if they looked at you. About how, if they are real, they must enjoy this stillness, because they demand so much of it. Sometimes a girl breaks the hour of shadows. A sob. A whisper. A cough. The punishment is never announced. She simply does not attend prayers the next day. She does not sit with the others. Her mat is moved. Her lamp is removed. She is present, but not visible. You never ask if she saw the gods. You don't want to know. Because if she didn't, the silence was for nothing. And if she did, the silence might never stop. The matron teaches you to love the rituals. She says, belief is beauty, and beauty is obedience. She smiles when she says it, as if it's a poem, as if it's enough. You repeat it to yourself when you're tired, when your knees are raw from kneeling, when you haven't seen the moon in 6 nights and wonder if it's still real. Belief is beauty. Beauty is obedience. Obedience is everything. You begin to believe that, not because it comforts you, but because you've forgotten how not to. Eventually you stop asking what any of it means, not because you've found peace, but because the question itself becomes unnecessary. Meaning implies distance, a space between you and the thing you're asked to do. But here, belief is not something you reach for. It's something you wear, like your linen shift, like your painted coal, like your silence. It becomes your skin. You no longer notice how often you bow. You don't count your prayers. You don't remember the last time you tied your sash without whispering a god's name into the knot. These rituals used to feel external. Now they feel like heartbeat, background, automatic. The matron calls this internal harmony. What she means is, you have been absorbed, and it shows. You start to correct other girls for mistakes you once made yourself. You adjust their posture during prayers. You refold their offerings. You tell them, gently with a whisper, that they forgot the 2nd line of the 6th blessing. You don't do it to be cruel. You do it because it hurts to see disorder. Because when someone else fails, it reminds you that failure is possible. And if failure is possible, punishment is near. And if punishment is near, then belief was never enough. So you enforce. You participate. Because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. One night, a storm hits the palace. Rain, rare, pounding, floods the upper walkway. Thunder breaks like war. The wind howls through the sandstone halls. The harem is not allowed to look outside. That is the rule. Eyes inward during divine unrest. But someone looks. A girl near the entry curtain. She peeks, just once. The lightning illuminates her face for a split second. She is removed. Not violently. Just permanently. You are told the storm was sent to test the harem's discipline. That the gods were watching. That the girl's curiosity insulted them. That her departure is part of balance. And you believe it. You don't cry. You don't whisper about her that night. You tighten your sash in the dark and repeat the moon prayer 6 extra times. You kneel harder. Because next time, the lightning might catch you. Eventually, you forget what it felt like to not be watched. Not just by the matrons, not just by the gods, but by yourself. You monitor your thoughts. You censor your reactions. You do not allow sadness that has no form. You do not permit joy that has no reason. You've begun to believe that your emotions are meant to be useful, not expressive. Gratitude, acceptable. Reverence, required. Longing, only in the form of poetry. Anything else is private, and there is no privacy. Even dreams are regulated. Once a month, the scribes ask you to recount your dreams. Not for insight, for documentation. Your words are recorded, categorized, interpreted. A bird with broken wings means you're misaligned. A snake in water means change is coming. A lost path means you require more fasting. No one asks how the dreams feel, only what they imply. If you stop dreaming, they give you herbs. If you dream too vividly, they restrict your meals. If you dream of escape, and admit it, you're sent for purification. You've never admitted it, but the dreams happen. You dream of sand that moves beneath your feet like water, of trees that whisper your real name, of faces with no mouths, praying without sound. You wake with tears in your ears. You stare at the ceiling. You chant a blessing. You do not tell anyone. You're not stupid. You know that belief is a tool. You know it's used to shape you. You know that the gods, or at least the version of them used inside these walls, demand nothing but smoothness. But still, you believe. Not because it's true, but because it gives shape to your pain. Because if suffering is sacred, then maybe you're not wasting your life. Maybe you're being carved, refined, prepared for something greater. Maybe you are more than what they say you are. And maybe, just maybe, the gods do see you. Not as a failure, not as background, but as something rare, something tested, something holy. You repeat that idea to yourself as you light the incense, as you press your forehead to the stone floor, as you whisper the names of gods who have never answered. You are not nothing. You are sacred through suffering. You are visible through silence. You are obedient because you are chosen. And chosen, even when it hurts, is better than forgotten. There is no warning before it happens. One day, the girl who sleeps 2 mats over, the one who laughs like water and braids flowers into your hair when the matron isn't looking, is gone. Not punished, not reassigned. Just gone. Her bed is made. Her clothes are folded. Her comb is missing. There are no whispers about where she went. You try to ask, quietly, carefully. A raised eyebrow. A tilt of the head. No one responds. Not with words. But they look at you like you've committed a crime by noticing. You learn that absence is sacred. It must not be disturbed. Later that week, during the midday walk around the reflecting pool, a different girl collapses. No sound. Just fold at the knees like wet cloth. You rush toward her, so do two others. Instinct, not disobedience. But the matron yells, sharp as thunder, and you stop mid-step. The girl is lifted by servants, carried like a rug, her head lolled, her wrist swinging. You never see her again. Later you hear someone whisper, heat stroke. Another says pregnancy. Another just says, her spirit didn't match the air. What does that mean? No one explains. And the world moves on. That's the real horror. The palace never stops. Not for death, not for madness, not for you. If someone disappears, their mat is cleaned by evening. Their dishes are replaced. Their name removed from the blessing list. The system seals around the absence like water around a stone. You feel it, how quickly you could be erased. 1 minute you're a person, and the next you're a story told too quietly to be remembered. Sometimes the horror is not in what happens, but in how it is dressed. You're told to sing during ceremonial washings. The chants are cheerful, about beauty, grace, divine favour. But the water is freezing. You kneel naked on cold stone, while servants scrub your skin until it reddens, then burn scented resin to purify the air. You smile through it. You hum with the others. If you wince, the matron frowns. If you flinch, you're told you lack devotion. If you cry, they say the gods are displeased. So you cry on the inside, neatly, quietly. The rituals get stranger. During the festival of the crocodile moon, you are made to dress in green and gold. You wear a crown made of reeds. The older girls paint your feet with ink shaped like scales. You think it's for beauty, until you learn the ceremony honours Sobek, the god of violence, virility, and rivers. That night, the matron reads a list. Names. You hear yours. You're one of 12 girls chosen to bless the waters. This turns out to mean walking, barefoot, veiled, silent, into the river's edge just after dusk. Priests chant nearby. The water is cold, filled with lilies and things that move beneath the surface. You are told not to react. If you flinch, Sobek will know, one priest says, and he does not reward fear. You stand in that river for an hour. Mosquitoes hum. Frogs cry. Something brushes your leg. You do not scream. When it's over, you return to your chamber. No one speaks. The reeds in your crown have wilted. Your painted scales have smudged. You are told you have been sanctified. You don't feel sanctified. You feel like a piece of bait. But you say thank you anyway, because that's the rule. Thank the gods for everything, even if what they've done is unkind. Especially then. Sometimes horror arrives in silence. A girl speaks out, not loudly, just once. She questions a rule, not even a major one. She asks why prayers must always end with, "Let the Pharaoh shine." She wonders if maybe the gods are separate from him. It's not a rebellion. It's a thought she's overheard. The next day she is there, but changed. Her head is shaved. Her robe is brown. She does not join the rituals. She is not invited to eat with the others. She stands during meals, does not kneel during chants. Her lips are dry. She does not speak. When asked a question, she points to the sky. No one knows what happened, but she does not ask questions anymore, and no one else asks them either. It doesn't take long before you stop thinking of fear as unusual. It's just another texture now, like perfume, like stone. And still it surprises you how calmly horror can present itself. You once saw a girl punished for laughing during laundry, not loudly, just a soft giggle. The cause? Another girl had made a joke about figs. Something harmless, something human. The matron heard it from across the courtyard. The girl was not scolded. She was not beaten. She was dressed in a bright yellow sash, braided differently than usual, and told to sit alone during dinner for 7 nights. Everyone could see her. She wasn't hidden, she was displayed. A warning in silk, they called it reflective solitude. You asked what that meant. Another girl answered, "It means she embarrassed the harem by showing too much joy." The absurdity burns, but quietly. Joy here must be ornamental, scripted, appropriate, context approved. Everything unscripted is considered dangerous. You begin to realise that laughter is more threatening to the palace than rage. Rage can be managed, silenced, but laughter, real laughter, suggests the rules are breakable, that something is funny, and in a place this tightly wound, that's unacceptable. Another time, you are told to memorise a story, not for entertainment, for practice. It's called The Tale of the Mirrorless Bride. In it, a concubine is chosen by the pharaoh, but she gazes into a mirror too long before the ceremony. She becomes corrupted by her own image. That phrase is repeated again and again. Corrupted by her own image. In the story, her beauty melts, literally. Her face dissolves. Her skin peels. Her eyes bleed honey. She is locked in a chamber of silence until her soul forgets what it looked like. At the end, she emerges humble and invisible, fit for sacred duty. You are told this story during prayer week. You are expected to repeat its moral aloud. Vanity poisons clarity. No one dares to ask how staring at yourself causes skin to melt, or why the gods would punish reflection, or whether any of this is true. It doesn't matter. The lesson is clear. Don't look too hard at who you are. And if you do, lie about what you see. Some horrors are performed as theatre. Once a season, the concubines gather in the Hall of Earth. An enormous echoing chamber lined with carved alabaster tiles and small bowl-like hollows along the walls. You're told to sit in 2 long lines. Then the ceremony begins. A senior priest enters, flanked by stewards. They are carrying jars, clay, ancient-looking, sealed with wax. Each girl is given one. You're told not to open it, not until the priest says so. Then, all at once, the seals are cracked. Inside, pieces of salt-dried meat, some shriveled figs, a coil of hair. You're told it is sacred, a symbol of the soul. You must bury it, right there, into the small hollow beside you. You use your fingers. Your hands are not washed. The matron recites a chant in an ancient dialect no one understands anymore. Then silence. That's it. No explanation. Just burial. Later, someone whispers that the jars contain offerings from dead concubines, that the hair might be theirs, that the meat is funerary food, that you're helping them cross into the afterlife. You wonder if the jars are just props. You wonder if the horror was the point. You never find out. And the fact that you never find out becomes its own kind of terror, because not knowing is safer than knowing. Sometimes the absurdity disguises itself as beauty. You're chosen for an event called the Blessing of the Breath. Sounds peaceful. It's not. You and 6 others are instructed to wear translucent white shifts soaked in blue lotus oil. You're led into the Garden of Hecate, a sacred space, usually off limits. Inside are rows of cages, bronze, polished. They contain birds, doves, cranes, sparrows. The matron explains, so yeah, you will breathe for them. One by one, the cages are opened. Each girl takes a bird. You hold it, close. It flutters, but you've been told not to let go. A priest murmurs something, you're not told what. Then, in a soft, practiced motion, you are instructed to place your lips to the bird's head. And exhale. That's it. Exhale. They call it a ritual of shared life. The birds are supposed to carry your breath to the gods. Then the birds are taken, returned to cages. No one mentions what happens to them afterward. But the next morning, you see feathers in the refuse basin and blood on a steward's sleeve. You don't ask, because nothing that's beautiful here is harmless, and nothing sacred is ever questioned. Some ceremonies are optional, which means they're not. They're called volunteer devotions. You're encouraged to step forward. And when no one does, someone is chosen. That someone is usually the girl who was late last week, or the one whose song was too soft, or the one who didn't smile enough at morning blessing. Volunteering, you learn, is often survival disguised as piety. One such devotion involves fasting for 3 days, then being locked in a stone chamber with a statue of the goddess Taweret, protector of fertility and childbirth. You are not told what to do inside the chamber. You're simply told to listen for instruction. You never hear what happens in there. You only hear what happens after. One girl comes out radiant. She walks slower, smiles at nothing, answers questions in proverbs. The matron praises her. She has been opened to the goddess. Another girl comes out shaking, refuses to eat, refuses to speak, bites her own fingers until they bleed. She is reassigned. The matron calls it rebalance in the lower quarters. You never see her again, and no one ever talks about what the statue said. Madness here is often mistaken for holiness. There's a girl they call the mirror. She repeats everything you say, just half a breath behind you. She was once known for her beautiful singing voice. Now she no longer sings, only mimics. No one knows what happened. Some say she saw something she shouldn't. Others say she drank too much of the night oil during a dream fast. A few believe she was cursed by a jealous wife. But the matron insists the mirror is a vessel. She holds our truths. You are told to bow when she passes. And so you bow, because in the palace, clarity is not the goal. Obedience is. Sometimes, absurdity is used to test your boundaries. You're handed a stone and told not to let go of it for 3 days. You must eat with it, bathe with it, sleep with it. You're not told why. You try to ask. The matron says, if you need a reason, you're not ready. So you carry the stone, you name it, you talk to it. You begin to imagine that it warms in your hand, that it pulses with meaning. You dream of dropping it and being swallowed by the floor. And then, on the 3rd day, the matron simply says, give it back. No ceremony, you hand it over. She nods once. You've been seen. Seen by whom? For what? No answer. Just the silence of a completed trial. You start to see the pattern. Absurdity is used to hollow you out, so they can fill you with something else. Belief. Obedience. Nothingness. Anything but self. One morning a rumour spreads. The pharaoh is dying. No official word confirms it, but girls begin to act differently. They pray more. They fast harder. They avoid mirrors. The entire harem becomes subdued, like a waiting lung. You ask why. A whisper reaches you. If he dies, some of us will be buried with him. You laugh. No one else does. That's when you learn about the old rites. They're not done often, only for special pharaohs, great ones, divine ones. When they die, they are buried with symbols of beauty, with living devotion. That means concubines. Some selected girls are told, prepared, draped in white and gold. led into the tomb chambers under the palace, sealed in, alive. You don't believe it at first, until you pass the stone crypts during a cleaning task, and see small marks, faint scratches on the inside of the stone, tiny crescents, dig marks, fingernail tracks, real, old. You walk faster after that. That night you pray harder than you ever have, not because you believe in mercy, but because you believe in being overlooked. You tell the gods, let me be ordinary, let me be quiet, let me be unchosen. The absurdity turns into superstition. Girls begin collecting things, crumbs, feathers, shards of broken combs. One girl keeps a dead beetle beneath her mat, says it protected her in a dream. Another ties thread around her wrist and whispers names into it at dawn. No one calls this strange, because it's no stranger than anything else. You begin to do it too, not because you believe in charms, but because belief is what keeps you breathing, and breathing here is already a miracle. Eventually you stop reacting, not because the horror has ended, but because it has become expected, normal. One morning, you awaken to find a line of girls standing at the edge of the courtyard, each holding a single lotus flower in her mouth. No explanation, just silence. You join the line. You are handed a flower. You place it between your teeth and wait. 20 minutes pass, then 30. The petals begin to wilt against your lips. No one moves. You don't know what this ritual is for, but the others do it, and you have learned that asking why is more dangerous than whatever the answer might be. Later, the matron tells you it was a purity test. She never explains what you passed. This is the shape of your life now. Strange ceremonies performed with complete seriousness, then discarded as if they never happened. You once spend an entire afternoon weaving reeds into spirals. Not into baskets, not into mats, just spirals. You're told not to break them, not to speak. You make 17. They are taken from you, burned. You're not told why. But that night, dinner is sweeter. And you feel proud. That's the madness. You begin to take pride in your obedience to nonsense, because you need to believe that your suffering is not for nothing. Otherwise you would scream. And screaming is not allowed. One girl tries, not loudly, just a whisper. In the dark. You hear it from her mat. You hear the faintest gasp of frustration. I don't understand, she breathes. Why are we still here? The next day her voice is gone, not metaphorically, literally. She opens her mouth to speak and nothing comes out. No sound. Not even breath. She clutches her throat. The matron says nothing. The priests say she has been gifted with silence. They call it divine. You call it terrifying. But only inside your head. Out loud you murmur, she is blessed. Because that's what belief sounds like here. Agreement with terror. Another time, you're woken in the middle of the night for reflection training. You and a dozen others are marched barefoot into a dark corridor. You're told to kneel facing the wall and remain still. No time limit, no instruction, just stillness. Hours pass. You fall asleep sitting up. You wake when someone coughs. You do not turn your head. You count bricks. You begin to hallucinate the sound of water dripping, but there is no water. At dawn, the matron appears. She says only one thing. You're better now. And walks away. You nod, because you want it to be true. That you are better. That the ritual changed something. That there is a point to this. Sometimes the absurdity reaches a fever pitch. A level so strange, it circles back to elegance. You're given a bowl of gold dust, real gold, crushed into powder. You are told to blow it gently onto the statue of a falcon. 1 breath, that's all. The priest watches you. He measures the spread of the dust, the evenness of your breath, the intent behind your eyes. Then he nods. Once. You are dismissed. You do not know what this means. You're not supposed to. What matters is that you performed well. Later, a girl asks what happens if someone sneezes. No one laughs because someone did, once. She was removed. You don't know where to. But the next time you pass the falcon statue, the gold dust had turned red. No one mentioned it. Another girl, younger than most, begins to believe she is a bird. She walks with her arms held slightly out, tilts her head to the side when spoken to, refuses bread, pecks at grapes. One day, she leaped from the edge of the bathing platform into the pool without warning. She does not surface quickly. When she does, she's laughing. The matron does not punish her. She simply says, "The goddess has taken her mind. Let us not take it back." From that day forward, the girl is served separately, given feathers with her robes, and no one says it's strange, because in this place, madness is easier to accept than resistance. Resistance gets you removed. Madness gets you spared. And deep down, you start to wonder if madness is the only way to survive. There is one ritual no one speaks about. Ever. Not openly. It's called the closing. It happens only once a year. In a hidden chamber. Yes, so you are not chosen, but someone is. They are dressed in pure obsidian cloth, their head covered, their hands painted silver. They walk past the rest of you without speaking. They return 3 days later. Their eyes are changed, dull, flat, heavy. They do not kneel as low during prayers anymore. They do not sing. They do not eat sweets. They do not respond to compliments. When asked what the closing is, they simply say, "It is the end of asking." That answer spreads through the harem like perfume, and eventually it becomes a saying. Girls whisper it when things get too strange, when rituals become unbearable, when pain stops making sense. It is the end of asking. You say it too, and for the first time, you realise what you've become. A girl who no longer wants answers, because answers require questions, and questions are a luxury you can't afford. There comes a morning when you don't rise for prayer, not out of rebellion, not out of exhaustion, but because you forget. Your body simply doesn't move. The bell chimes. Girls shift in their beds. You hear whispers, shuffling, feet padding to their marks. But you don't rise. You lie there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling as if it's become a second sky. Nothing hurts. Not exactly. It's worse than that. Nothing registers. When the matron finds you, she says nothing, just stands there, watching. You meet her gaze, and for once, there's no fear behind your eyes, only fog, a kind of dull stillness. She doesn't punish you. She doesn't praise you. She just leaves. And you realise you have entered a new phase, not of devotion, not of holiness, but of absence. You're still here. You eat, you bathe, you sing, but it's all automatic, like a puppet in a sacred play. The words come from your throat, but they don't belong to you. The gestures pass through your hands, but your fingers feel wooden. You laugh when the others laugh. You nod when the matron speaks. You kneel. You bow. You glow. But inside, you are gone. There was a self once, a voice that had weight, a sense of you behind your eyes. It's not dead, just misplaced, blurred, like ink soaked too long in water. You try to remember your mother's voice. You can't. You try to remember your original name. Not your palace name, not your number. Your name. Nothing comes. And that's when the grief hits. Not like a storm. Like a leak. Slow. Silent. Relentless. You cry without knowing why. Not just at night. Not just alone. Sometimes in the garden. Sometimes during song. Tears slip down your face without warning. Without reason. No one stops you. No one scolds you. The matron watches, then looks away. Because now, you're part of the furniture. Beautiful. Useful. Broken. You start to envy the girls who still fear punishment. Because fear means you still believe in consequence. And consequence means you still think something might change. You don't. Not anymore. You've entered a state beyond dread. Beyond resistance. Beyond hope. The others notice. They start giving you extra bread. Small favours. A second rinse of perfume. Not out of pity. Out of recognition. Because they've seen it before. They've seen the ones who fade like this. Who ghost through the routine, shining faintly like stars trapped underwater. One girl calls it turning to stone. Another calls it the quiet dying. The matron has a different word. Adjustment. She tells the priests you've adjusted well. They nod. They don't look you in the eye. You wonder if they can see the hollow behind your smile. You wonder if they care. But mostly, you wonder how much longer your body will keep pretending to be alive. There's a moment during evening prayer when it happens. You hear your voice reciting the words. You feel your hands pressed together. You taste the dryness in your mouth. And suddenly, you feel it. You're watching yourself from somewhere else. Not above, not outside, just displaced. Like your soul has stepped sideways and is now peering at the shell left behind. You keep chanting. The others don't notice, but you feel it. You're not here anymore. And somehow that feels more peaceful than terrifying. Because maybe this is what survival really is. Not resilience, not strength. Just the ability to fracture so gently no one hears it break. You stop dreaming. Or if you do, the dreams no longer stay. They slip through your fingers the moment you wake. A flash of blue. A sound without a source. A feeling you can't name. Then gone. Like smoke from a candle long burned out. The other girls still whisper their dreams at dawn. They ask for interpretations. They hope for signs. Of promotion. Of favour. Of meaning. You nod along. You smile when they smile. But you've stopped listening. Because your nights are blank now. Like the sky before creation. And somewhere deep inside, you're grateful. Dreams mean desire. Desire means danger. You've finally reached a state they praise most here. Unshaped. Uncarved. Ready. You used to think they wanted you obedient. Then you thought they wanted you beautiful. Then holy. But now you understand. They want you soft. Not in body. In spirit. They want you pliable. Absorbent. Able to carry their rituals without resistance and never spill. You are no longer a person. You are a vessel. And empty vessels are praised for their purity. You speak only when spoken to. And even then, you weigh your words like stones. Not from fear, from habit. Silence has become your native language. You speak it fluently now. You wear it like a second skin. And in some terrible, impossible way, it feels safe. Because silence cannot be misinterpreted. Silence does not offend. Silence cannot be punished for saying too much. You sit in the garden longer these days. You watch ants, birds, cracks in the tile. You count petals falling from a dying lotus. You marvel at how beautiful it is to disappear without noise. The younger girls still flinch at shadows. They still worry about being seen. being passed over, being scolded. You watch them with a strange fondness, like memories you used to have. You want to tell them, one day it won't matter, but you don't, because it's something they will have to discover for themselves. Because the day you stop wanting anything is the day you're finally safe. There's a moment during incense hour when the realization settles fully. You no longer remember who you were before this. Not just your name, not just your family. Your entire before has faded, like sunlight on stone. You try to picture your village, a street, a roof, a voice, nothing. Only fog, only the palace, only now. And instead of panic, you feel relief, because remembering hurts, and forgetting is quiet, and quiet is the only comfort left to you. The matron notices. She smiles when she passes you, says, "You've found your rhythm." What she means is, you've stopped struggling. You are water now, still, and shaped only by the vessel around you. You sit straighter during prayers. You move smoother during ceremonies. You no longer blink at strange rituals. You perform them with grace, because you've stopped needing things to make sense. And that's what makes you perfect. Perfect for the palace. Perfect for worship. Perfect for disappearing. You overhear two matrons speaking once, near the Jasmine Gate. One says she's ready. The other says she doesn't even twitch. You don't know if they're talking about you. You hope they are. Because in this place, being noticed means danger. But being admired for emptiness? That's the closest thing to protection you've ever had. There are days now when you go entire hours without thinking a single thought. Not a real one. Not a personal one. You walk, you eat, you fold linen, you recite praise. But there's no voice behind your actions. No inner witness, just doing. As if someone else is driving your body and your mind is asleep in the passenger seat. And when you notice, you don't panic, you welcome it. It means the quiet is working, because thought brings pain, reflection brings want. Want brings danger? Better to drift, to float, to let the palace carry you like a reed on the Nile, wherever it wants, however it wants, with no protest and no memory of where you started. You still feel things, of course, but the edges are gone. Joy is a distant bell, soft, muffled, untrustworthy. Sadness is just a weight behind your ribs that never quite moves. Hunger arrives as a suggestion. Pleasure passes like wind. There, then gone. You react to none of it, because nothing lasts here. Not desire, not grief, not even curiosity. Especially not curiosity. The girls who are curious, they don't last long. Some are transferred. Others grow sharp with longing and are quietly disciplined. Their robes changed, their heads shaved, their voices dimmed. You learned long ago. Questions lead you to edges. And the palace does not tolerate edges. It is a place of circles. Repetition. Return. Even your steps are circular now. You rise, you kneel, you sing, you eat, you kneel again. You breathe only when told. You speak only in phrases that have been spoken 1,000 times. You're not punished. You are praised. You are steady, the matron says. You are graceful. You are one of the quiet ones. You smile. You bow. You don't feel proud. You don't feel anything. Only the faint glow of being approved. And in this world, that's as close to safety as you can hope to get. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of your reflection in a polished dish, a pool, a bronze panel on the wall. It takes you a moment to recognize your own face. Not because it's changed, though it has, but because you no longer carry the expression of a person who expects to be seen. You look like the other girls now, the older ones, the ones who've been here the longest. Their faces all wear the same softness, like silk stretched too many times. Their smiles are thin. Their eyes are half closed, even when awake. Their bodies move like they're underwater. You used to wonder how they got that way. Now, they didn't break. They evaporated. You feel it happening to you too. Each day a little less memory, a little less reaction, a little less ache. Even your fear is fading. You used to flinch at the priest's staff tapping stone. Used to feel dread when your name was called for inspection. Used to tremble during recitations, terrified of saying the wrong word. Now, you speak with calm precision. You wait when told to wait. You smile when they test your posture, your tone, your purity. You have passed through fear. You have reached something stranger, a kind of obedience that feels holy. Not because the gods are real, but because pretending they are is easier than remembering how to want anything else. You think of your past life less and less. When you do, it feels like a story someone once told you. A village, a father, a riverbank, a voice that called your name. You can't picture it anymore. And somehow, that's a relief. Because remembering only made the palace more painful. Forgetting makes it tolerable. And tolerance is the closest thing to peace you've been offered. So you accept it. You sink into the routine. You breathe when they say breathe. You chant with the others. You close your eyes. And for a moment, a brief, flickering moment, you almost feel safe. You no longer count the days. The sun rises, the sun sets, the lamps are lit, the lamps are put out, but time has lost its grip on you. You mark your world by rituals now, not by dates, not by seasons, but by moments of movement. The clink of a bowl placed in your hands, the hush that falls when the matron enters, the scent of burning resin drifting through your sleeping chamber, the soft shuffling of feet as prayers are recited in unison. These are your clocks. These are your borders. The passage of time feels less like a line and more like a spiral, looping back on itself endlessly, gently, almost tenderly. You forget how long you've been here. And more importantly, you stop trying to remember. Because remembering implies something different existed. And different is dangerous. Somewhere inside you, a thread still remains. A thin, barely there awareness that once you had another life. But it's frayed, fragile. You don't tug on it. You let it drift. The girl you used to be, she doesn't visit anymore. Not in dreams, not in thoughts, not in the mirror. She's gone. And what remains is quieter, slower, smaller, but still breathing, still here. You learn to love the quiet. Not in the way poets write about. Not as a profound silence filled with wisdom or the whisper of gods. Just as a space where nothing is asked of you. No decisions, no performance, no memories, just breath, one after another. Soft, shallow, real. You begin to find comfort in the weight of your own body, the feel of linen against skin, the smell of oil on your wrists, the rhythm of your steps along the polished floor. These small physical anchors keep you from floating too far. They remind you exist. You're not a voice anymore, not an identity, not even a person in the way the outside world defines it. You are a presence, a practiced gesture, a well-rehearsed silence. And in this world, that is enough. One evening, you are summoned by the high priest. You kneel. You keep your head down. He does not speak for a long time. Then he says, "You have become peace." You nod. Because what else is there to say? Peace here means absence. Peace means no ripple, no resistance, no desire. And you are peaceful now. The kind of peace that follows surrender. The kind of peace that feels like snow, soft, quiet, and indifferent. He blesses you. You do not remember the words. You do not try. You walk back to your chamber, sit by the window slit, and stare at the thin line of moonlight that falls across the stone. You do not cry. You do not smile. You simply sit. And that stillness, that non-reaction, is the truest prayer you've ever offered. Later that night, the matron visits. She doesn't speak, just places a folded cloth beside your mat. Inside is a thin necklace. Nothing ornate, just a loop of cord with a bead shaped like an eye. You understand immediately. You are now a guide, a girl others will learn from, a girl the younger ones will mimic. Not because of your knowledge, but because of your silence. Your stillness has become curriculum. You wear the bead the next day. No one congratulates you. They simply bow a little deeper. And you bow in return. Not out of pride, but muscle memory. Everything is memory now, not yours. The palace's. You've become part of it. A ritual in motion. A ghost with warm skin. A thread in the fabric, and it no longer hurts. Not because the pain has ended, but because you've learned to breathe around it, to sleep beside it, to wake with it curled softly in your chest like a pet that no longer bites. This is not freedom. This is not healing. This is not the return of anything. It is what remains when everything else has left. And for now, for tonight, that is enough. That is. No wrap-up, no closure, no one enters to rescue you, no triumphant music swells. The palace still stands, the priests still chant, the incense still burns. You lie on your mat, eyes open, breathing slow, mind empty. Somewhere, a door closes. Somewhere else, a girl forgets her name. And the silence, that long, golden silence, keeps going. Just like you do. Just like always. Sleep now. And if you wake, don't reach for anything. It's easier that way.